Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Groot-Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy, and in this podcast, Blake and I are going to start an 8-episode series in which we go team by team comparing notes on our projections for the 2024-25 season. You're not going to want to miss this one. Let's get it. And of course, I have your friend and my best friend. Find me a Mandrake. It's Blake Creamer. Blake, how are we feeling tonight?
Oh my God. What the hell's a mandrake? First off, I mean, what you're going to make me Google right off the top of the show here, Nate? I don't know.
I mean, you can check out the Wikipedia page, but they were used in ancient times as a symbol of virility, as far as I know. So take that how you will.
Then you're definitely describing me. All right. I don't know where I'm going with that, buddy. I feel good. I'm a 44-year-old man in a backwards cap. All right. And that's how I'm getting the biz today. And it feels amazing. I am so stoked to get into this with you, man. It feels like that, we've been kind of treading water fantasy wise for the summer, and it's been awesome, but something's clicked, right? Obviously, You did your Yahoo mock draft the other night, and it's just starting to feel, I don't know, there's something about this season that feels a little bit more epic here at Apples and Genos, and I can't put my finger on it, but I'm here for it, and I'm excited to get into this with you.
Absolutely. We are not going to waste any time. So as I mentioned off the top, this is the first of an 8-part series. We are going to do 4 teams in each one of these episodes. We're going to go team by team, really dig in player by player, compare notes on our projections, compare notes on how we're expecting these lines and things to play out. We're not going to talk goalies in these. We're just talking about projections. We're talking about skaters. We're talking about what matters.
Oh, this is not okay. That's fine.
We're talking about what matters for fantasy hockey here, right? But yeah, that's the plan. We're going to get through 4 teams in this one here and 4 teams in every one of the 8 episodes here after. We're going backwards. Blake, do you have any idea why we might be going backwards through the teams alphabetically this time around?
I don't know. You're the boss, buddy. I mean, I'm just happy to be here, Nate. I don't know. Explain yourself.
All right, we can leave it at that. It's definitely nothing to do with the order in which Blake did his projections this year. But the first team that we are going to kick things off with is the Winnipeg Jets. And this is an interesting team for sure. We can talk about some key departures and some key additions. Right off the top, they did not make any additions. Basically the most noteworthy player that they added this year was Jarrett Anderson-Dolan. If you've never heard of Jarrett Anderson-Dolan before now, you are not alone. So yeah, pretty much nothing changing on that front for the Jets. They did have some key departures. Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli, both deadline pickups for them last year. They both move on in free agency this year, and then they did lose Brendan Dillon on the back end. Not obviously super fantasy relevant, except maybe in some Bangers Cats leagues if you're streaming some hits out of Dillon at some point throughout the season. But definitely it impacts the overall defense for the Jets, so worth bringing up here for sure. How are you feeling about Winnipeg as a team here, Blake? I will note, like, they were kind of a hot PDO team. They're the second highest PDO in the league at even strength last year. If you don't know what PDO means, that's basically the addition of their save percentage and their shooting percentage. Obviously, having Connor Hellebuck meant they had a really high save percentage, but they're also 9th in shooting percentage, which could spell some regression. Did you factor anything like that into your projections? Did you see any of that as you're going player by player through this team?
You know how I do my projections, Nate. Everybody on ice shooting percentage to the moon. All right. That's how we go. But yeah, I think you have to, right? PDO is a really interesting stat. It's like a luck stat, right? So
yeah.
The interesting thing about Winnipeg is, one half of the season to the next half of the season, they were second in PDO for both halves, and then obviously finished second. Like, we'll talk about the Canucks later on, but they were on a PDO bender at the start of the season, and then they fell off. So it is nice to see that they were able to maintain the number 2 spot in PDO. But yeah, I think you have to expect a little bit of regression, and you got to bake that into some of your projections. But to me, it's weird, like, because we've been doing these best ball leagues here at Apples and Ginos. Shout out to the Discord, get in there, get in the best ball leagues. But I feel like people are down on the Jets. It's weird, and I don't really get it. Like, I'm not excited about them. I don't think they're an exciting fantasy team, but they have a lot of viable fantasy options here that I think we can get at value in draft season. So yeah, I think these guys were lights out defensively, and you've got Connor Hellebuck in the net to stop the puck. So they had a great season defensively, and they overachieved offensively. So we'll see what happens. But interesting piece on Winnipeg too. They got a ton of off nights, great schedule. I think I'm going to be targeting a few of these beauties.
Fair enough. Well, one reason that there could be some reticence with some Winnipeg players this year is you do have the coaching change. Scott Arniel graduates from interim to head coach. Rick Bowness spent 2 different periods of time away from the team for various personal reasons last year, and then moved on this offseason. Scott Arniel was the interim while Bowness was out, and takes over as full-time head coach this year. So we've already kind of seen a good amount of his coaching while Bowness was out. Now, whether or not he was just kind of carrying the flag for Bowness while he was out, just kind of continuing things, not wanting to rock the boat, not really introducing a whole lot of his own flavor or his own systems, or however he wants to play the game, that might be worth examining. I will note that it did seem like the team dipped a little bit late in the season. It appears like, just going by the numbers, that they tried to play a little bit less of an offensive game, which is a little bit interesting too, given the acquisitions of Monahan and Toffoli. I don't know. There might be something there, there might not, but I do think it's at least worth thinking about that. The only indication that we really have under Arniel is that it might be a little bit even less of an offensive game from Winnipeg. They might really try to lock down the defensive side. I'm not saying like that's how it's going to be, but I'm saying it's at least something that I'm considering with this team. How do you feel about that, Blake?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that this is going to equal any real change from what we saw last year. But that said, too, I mean, when a guy takes over, partway through the season, it's really hard to make wholesale changes, right? You don't really want to rock the boat. Like, this was a playoff team. They're getting in there. They're stacking up. They're ready to go for a playoff run. So he doesn't want to make huge changes. So what does that mean with the full offseason, though? And, there's not a lot of information for me personally on Scott Arniel, besides that he, coached Columbus to a dismal record, and, and he's been, the assistant coach to Rick Boner. You know what? I got to shout out Rick Bowness really quick. My hatred for Rick Bowness is literally only because he won't play Nick Ehlers. Oh, and that rant he did at the end of 2 seasons ago against his players. But this guy seems like a beauty. I don't know. I saw him, do some sports analysis in the playoffs. Anywho, shout out to Rick Bowness. You're no longer Rick Boner. All right, you've graduated to Rick Bowness. Anyways, I don't think there's going to be a bunch of change, but I think that they had a really nice bump, Winnipeg, in their defensive metrics from 22-23 to this season.
Yeah.
Right. And they outperformed their environment offensively with an expected goal that was ranked 13th overall at 5-on-5 and an actual goal total that ranked at 10th. So that's pretty darn good. I don't know. I feel like that's probably going to be in the wheelhouse with Arniel in charge. I don't see a bunch of wholesale changes.
All right, fair enough. Let's check in on the power play. They have typically run a true top power play there in Winnipeg. They kind of have the personnel that kind of dictates this alignment, in my opinion. So I'm not really anticipating anything different there. I think you've got Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Josh Morrissey, and probably Gabriel Velarde locked in on the top power play. We'll start there, Blake. Do you see that any differently, or do you feel like those guys are pretty sure bets to be on the top power play?
Yeah, I think that's got to be a lock. I mean, those are the best players they have out there, and they have some history together. Like they obviously really like Velarde here, and we're going to talk about him. Yeah. But Velarde's going to get all the offensive minutes that he wants this year, I think, and he's going to have a chance to do something, especially for fantasy. So I think we're locked in there. And then it's only, oh God, what are we doing with that 5th spot, Nate?
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. I think there's really two candidates for it in my mind. Although, I mean, we've seen it across the league. Like, and you think about Nick Paul being the
Mhm.
fifth guy on the
Yep.
Tampa power play last year. Like, there's always an outside chance of something like that happening. I don't think that's the case here. You've got Velarde to be that big body in front on this particular power play, so I think it's more likely that you're looking at either Nikolai Ehlers or Cole Perfetti as the fourth forward. Both players that it kind of seems like the coaching staff has not really enjoyed the performance
Mhm.
of at various points. I think you got to be a little bit optimistic, more optimistic that Ehlers could find his way on there. It does kind of feel like they've paved the way a little bit for him here. It feels like Perfetti's the only other option, and they really deprioritized Perfetti towards the end of last year. It really felt like they, yeah, for whatever reason, were not into what he was bringing to the team
Yep.
at the end of last year. Which, yeah, we'll get to Perfetti, but I'm still in on the player, on the talent there. So I do think there is some cause to be optimistic about Ehlers. I'm curious, Blake, what you ended up with in terms of the power play time on ice projection for Ehlers. I really did end up kind of splitting it and moving it all around. So I ended up with I ended up with 2 minutes, 15 seconds average time on ice on the power play for Ehlers.
Oh, damn.
So where did you end up with them?
I gave him the juice. All right.
All
And,
right.
enough is enough. I gave him 3 minutes.
All
Okay.
right.
3 minutes power play time on ice is what I did for Ehlers there. And I mean, it doesn't make sense. Nothing else makes sense. That said, like you mentioned, Nick Paul is a great example. Like we could see Alex Iafallo out there. You know what I mean? Nino
Yeah.
Niederreiter. We could see those guys out there. Vlad Nemestikov. Come on. There are still people that could take over, and it might not just be Perfetti that's threatening Ehlers on the power play there.
Yeah. I think that's a fair note to make there. I mean, I will say too, Mason Appleton was an Arneal favorite. He was third in
Oh God,
EV
no.
time on ice the last 20 games played of last season. So, if anybody's gonna find their way in there, maybe it's Mason Appleton. I still wouldn't be interested for fantasy,
Fingers
but
crossed.
like,
Let's go.
yeah, yeah.
Actually, you know what? He should be our guy, Mason Appleton.
Oh,
Oh
that
my!
is true.
You
How
know
did
what?
I not
Is there
think?
anyone named Gino in the league? Because these could be our two new spokespeople. It's Mason Appleton and Gino Magoo.
I
I
I
don't know.
guess Malkin, right? Evgeny Malkin goes by
Okay,
Gino.
might be a little above where we're at, but I'll call my people, Nate. I'll get them on the line here.
All right. All right. Well, let's dig in on each of these players. So, if you're watching on YouTube, which you should be, especially for these episodes, we got some visuals up for you and some comparisons side by side where I've projected some players, where Blake's projected some players. No surprise at the top. We've both got Mark Scheifele in the mid 70s for points. I've got him for 34 goals, 40 assists, 74 points. Blake's got him for 32 goals and what's that, 47 assists, coming out to 78 points. So yeah, pretty close here. I think we both feel pretty confident about who Mark Scheifele is. Maybe it's plus or minus 5 points on any given season. We're 4 points apart here. I think we both feel pretty confident in knowing what Mark Scheifele is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a player I'm not concerned about. And low key, I'm into this player. Like, Mark Barber and Josh Hutchinson talked about Scheifele being value in these best ball drafts because he's just slipping down the boards. This guy's not an old man. He's 31. He's power play one, line one. I just think that like people are misvaluing this guy. He plays over 20 minutes a night. Like, yeah, I mean, he doesn't shoot as much as we'd like. And his offense is based on a lot of efficiency, right? This is a very
Yeah.
efficient shooter, but Jimmy Crack Hornet, I don't care. This guy's getting a bunch of minutes. And I think, again, with the power play, like if you got Ehlers out there, I think that raises the floor of this power play and what they're able to do. Like the Jets on the power play last year weren't blowing anybody's hair back, right? It was not that was like one of their areas where it wasn't really that good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it was mid, right? But you throw Ehlers on there for 3 minutes, give him the top power play treatment, and boom, we could get a Mark Scheifele who's getting more than 18 power play points. Like I think Scheifele's could be a 25 power play point guy, right? I didn't project him as such. I think I got him for 22 power play points, but that's still a positive regression on the power play. And I just like this player for close to a point a game or just under.
Yep, I think that's totally fair. Let's talk about Kyle Connor. This is actually the player that we have the most discrepancy on, so we should maybe dig in a little bit and see where that's coming from. I have him for 37 goals, 39 assists, 76 points. You have him for 43 goals, 41 assists, 84 points. So it's not the single biggest difference in the world, but it's substantial enough that there's something here. So let's figure out what it is here, Blake. What do you got for the even strength time on ice on Kyle Connor there? I got him for 16 and a half minutes even strength time on ice.
Yep, I'm there too. I'm just over 16 and a half.
Okay. And I've got him for 3.5 on the power play. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I gave him for just over that. So
Okay.
like I gave him just a bit over 3.5. So like 335 or something like that.
All right, so you must be giving him some more efficiency than I'm giving him there. I've got him at even strength, I've got him at a 14.3% shooting percentage and a 10% on ice shooting percentage.
Yeah, for me, I've got Connor at 14.8 shooting percentage and 10.4 on ice.
Okay, so you're getting a little bit of a boost there, and then you might also be doing the same thing on the power play, and that might just be what it is. What do you have him for? He's kind of shot less. He's been less efficient on the power play, which is kind of an odd situation. 10.5% shooting percentage on the power play is what I gave him with a 15% on ice.
Yeah, I gave him 11 with 14.9. So that's kind of a wash there. I mean, I have a little bit more time. What's your IPP? Because I got him for 66 on the power play.
I got him for 65, so pretty tight there. So yeah, we're not far off. It looks like you're just a little bit hotter, kind of across the board.
Yeah.
You have him probably for more shots. I would guess. What do you have his shot rate at? I have him for 15 on the power play, and I have him at 9.25 at even strength.
Yeah, there you go. So I got him for 10 at even strength, and I got him
Yeah.
for 16.8 on the power
Yeah.
play. So cooking a little bit more. I think it was a down season for Connor. Yeah, I mean, obviously he was dealing with a few injuries here and there, some ticky-tack injuries. I think just a bit of a down season, just for certain players on the Jets in particular, and kind of lines in a blender as well. So I think hopefully Arniel kind of keeps these guys a bit more solid throughout the year.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, yeah, I might be a little tad conservative on Connor here. I might highlight Connor to go back and take a look at just to make sure that I feel confident with where I'm at.
Oh, I love this.
He
We're
has
clipping this, and we're just going to put this out of the short.
because he definitely has hit the kind of pace that you're talking about before, and so I want to just double check. I think a little bit is just I'm baking in a tiny bit of that hesitancy around Arniel that maybe you're not. So yeah, that's probably factored in there as well. All right, let's move over to Gabe Vilardi. I think we're both interested in this player. I've got him for 36 goals, 22 assists, 58 points. You've got him for 33 goals, 29 assists, and 62 points. Yeah, let's talk about Vilardi. It feels like a bit of an incomplete projection from my side. Like, you really don't see goals versus assists being this lopsided towards goals a lot of the time, but he does kind of fit that mold of a guy who might just be that net front guy who kind of pops those in, and then he doesn't do a whole lot else.
Yep.
He's been very efficient. Like, I have him, I don't know where you've got him, but overall I have him at a 17.3% shooting percentage, so super efficient. Still 210 shots, so yeah, getting his fair share there as well. But the IPP has never been high with Vilardi, so he's never really factored in unless he's scoring the goal himself. So that's where it kind of comes out to the lower assist totals. That being said, like, it does feel like this was really Vilardi's first strong full season in a new spot where they're prioritizing him. I have to wonder if there is like an IPP ceiling for Vilardi that we haven't seen yet, where he gets a little bit more involved. He bumps this 56% even strength IPP that I have him for. If he bumps that up into like the mid 60s, like all of a sudden you're talking about a guy who's like pushing 70 points. With a good season, a good efficient season elsewhere, and that could be really exciting for fantasy. How do you see Vilardi and the upside case there?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it on the head there with the IPP. And something that I've noticed since I've kind of been digging in on micro stats is guys that, like, you've heard me talk about, controlled entries that lead to chances. Guys that lead the offense in that way, that rush offense, those are usually the guys with the high IPP. And Vilardi is not that guy. He's not the one leading that rush chance, right? He's an in zone guy. and he just sets up and let Kyle Connor and let Mark Scheifele do the work. And then you get in front of the net and you bang home the rebounds and you probably get a bunch of individual scoring chances for. So I think this makes total sense. Like his IPP, I think this is probably where it lives unless he changes his game a little bit. And because of that IPP, I mean, I actually projected him for a bunch of power play points, but that's where the bulk of his production is for me personally, which is really weird. Yeah, because without the power play points, the projection is a bit stinky.
Yep. Yeah, I've gone for 23 power play points. Where'd you end up?
Yeah, 24.5 is what I got. So, I mean, that's a nice season. I mean, that's a valuable guy that you can get late if these projections hit, which I don't see why not. Like he's out there. He's no one's taking his spot on power play 1.
Yep. Yeah, I really don't see a scenario outside of injury where Velarde, I mean, any player could have a bad season, could play through injury, all these things could happen. But outside of an injury scenario, I really don't see a situation in which Velarde is not having at least a very good season for fantasy with potential for even more. So Velarde is definitely a name of interest. We both did do a projection on Vladislav Nemestikov. It was not pretty.
Why?
34.5 points for me, 37.2 points for you.
Role player.
I don't think we need to spend any time there. We do need to spend time on Cole Perfetti, though. Perfetti, I have for 21 goals, 26 assists, 47 points. You have him for 23 goals, 25 assists, 48 points. As I mentioned before, it really does feel like they deprioritized this player as the season wore on. It feels like there's something else going on where, they just don't like the player, it feels like. I'd hesitate to put too much on that. Feels like it's always a little bit 50-50 whether it just goes away the next season or it actually becomes a bigger issue. So I don't want to overstate it, but I do want to put it out there that there is a pretty bad scenario for Cole Perfetti this year where it's just a complete wash of a season and he ends up getting traded or moved in season or at the end of next season. How do you feel about Perfetti and his potential upside scenario now that I've laid out the downside?
No, it gets even worse. Yours is the upside. No. Mom Spaghetti, Cole Perfetti. I just think he's not going to get the opportunity here this season anyway. And I read something in season here that they don't really like the way he plays defense, right? Like this is the way I read it, I'm paraphrasing, but it reminded me of Kuzmenko in Vancouver, right? The guy's great offensively, but he's missing his assignments. He's not doing what he needs to do. He's not doing what the coach wants him to do, right? So I think that was sort of some of the issue with Cole Perfetti and why he was being deprioritized. That said, I mean, now we have a new coach in here. I'm sure they've talked to him going into this season, what you need to work on, right? And obviously this guy has offensive acumen. So if he's put in offensive situations, I think there's a good chance he'll be able to do something, but I just think it's going to be slim pickings there. I got him for 48 points, which I feel like I don't feel comfortable going any higher than that based on what I've seen with this player.
Yeah.
But this is an offensive guy who's not really getting put in offensive situations because of his defensive play, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I've got him for 15 total minutes. Does that line up with what you got?
Yeah. I got him for 14.5.
Yeah. So, really the upside case for Perfetti really does lie with more ice time, both at even strength and potentially on the power play as the fifth forward. Outside of that, it's probably just a streamer.
Yep.
Let's talk about Ehlers. We've obviously loved Nikolai Ehlers here at Apples and Junos, but he has disappointed and then done terrific and then disappointed again at various points throughout the last number of seasons. I'm a little bit more conservative. Again, I've got him for 28 goals, 38 assists, rounding up to 66 points there. You've got him for 34 goals, 39 assists and 73 points. You're obviously going to bull case. We already talked about it a little bit. You've got given him the full 3 minutes on the power play, assuming he'll be there all year long. That's obviously the bull case. I've gone for 16 power play points. I'm assuming you're getting most of your juice over my projection is coming on the power play.
Yeah, I got 20 power play points there, which I think is conservative. I think that he's going to do better at even strength. I think he's going to get a little bit more ice time, and his numbers are going to, his conversion numbers, I think, are going to go up a little bit.
Fair enough. What do you have for total time on ice then?
Total time on ice for Ehlers, I've got 17.5 minutes.
All right, so yeah, that's the biggest difference for sure. I've got him for 15:45 total time on ice. So yeah, if he gets anywhere near that, I think I'd actually have a higher projection than you
Yeah,
would
totally.
at that point. So yeah, obviously we both love the player. It's really just a matter of how much time on ice he's getting. If Arneal really does like Ehlers, keeps him on top power play all year long, gives him that 17.5 minute treatment, like that's a going to be a very valuable player because this is a very, very talented offensive player. There's some crazy stats out there about his IPP. Like he's up
Mhm.
there with like the Crosbys and McDavids in terms of his IPP and how much he factors into the team's offense when he's on the ice.
Yep.
So he like it really does matter even more for Ehlers than most. You know, we talk about getting more opportunity for a lot of players, but with Ehlers, every minute counts because he really does get a ton of production. He squeezes a ton of production out of every minute that he's on the ice. I did do a little projection there for Lowry, 20 goals, 36 points. Nino Niederreiter, 23 goals, 39 points. These are going to be role player types, streamer types. Not too much there. But one other player that I am pretty into is Josh Morrissey on the back end. I've got him for 10 goals, 59 assists, 69 points. Really nice stuff for
Oh,
him. You've
absolutely.
got him also for 69 points, which is also pretty nice. You got him for 12 goals and 57 assists. Yeah, I'm super high on Morrissey this
Yeah.
year. Basically, I was worried about the season prior, the 2022-23 season, that it was a bit of a flash in the pan. He had some really high efficiency metrics. Came out this year, backed it all up, did the exact same thing all over again. Yeah, at this point, I have to bow and say, yeah, it looks like he just is that dude. He's going to generate a huge IPP at even strength, which is a really tough thing for a defenseman to do. He's going to skate a ridiculous amount of minutes. His shorthanded time on ice has been taken away in the last year. So he's really like every one of those 24 minutes is offensive potential. Yeah, it's wheels up for Josh Morrissey, in my opinion. I think this is a really good player that you're going to want on your fantasy teams this year.
Yeah, I love it. I'm here for it. Like sometimes that's how it works in fantasy, right? Like we can't just come out here and be like, "Yep, Morrissey's a 70-point defenseman, no problem, guys." After one season of doing that, right? Like look at Brandon Montour. Okay,
Yeah.
like this stuff happens, right? Look at Miro Heiskanen, even another one. But yeah, I love that you've targeted this player. And I think, yeah, there's nothing unsustainable here. And I love it, like you said about the shorthanded time too. Like that's gone away. This guy's an even strength warrior. He's out there for a ton of minutes. And his shooting percentage this year was almost cut in half. Right. And I think last season was the outlier, like 2022-23 was just, he was just running hot. But I do think he can do better than the 5.1 shooting percentage he had this year overall. So I think some more goals are coming. Plus, really crappy power play numbers. He had 28 in his big season. This last season, 19. So I think there's a it's probably somewhere in the middle. I got him for 21 power play points this upcoming year, which feels really nice. And it's just nothing seems unsustainable. Like he can falter in certain areas and get higher in other areas to absolutely meet this projection and maybe smash it.
Yep. Yeah, I've got him for exactly 21 power play points as well. So I'm in line there. Neil Pionk, the other defenseman that you might see on a fantasy roster from time to time. Not excited about this player. I think you did your projection after I put together the graphic here, Blake, but I've got him for 5 goals, 24 assists. You got him for 6 goals, 27 assists. The value here with Pionk is that he's going to be up around 200 hits. He's going to be well over 100 blocks. So if you're in a Bangers Cats, that's where Pionk gets the vast majority of his usefulness for fantasy purposes. All right, last step along the way here. Top 3 targets from this team for myself. Josh Morrissey, got to be the top guy after I just gushed about him there for a minute. Nikolai Ehlers for the upside there. Like I said, if I was anywhere close to your 17.5 minutes, Blake, I'd probably have a higher projection on Ehlers. So, yeah, I'm here for that. If that scenario comes true, I will want to be in on Ehlers. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Ehlers has a 90-point season in him at some point. I don't know that it's this year, but it will happen at some point. I feel pretty good about that. So I want to just keep taking shots on players with that kind of upside because, those are the guys who can actually win you something in fantasy hockey. Last off, Gabriel Velarde for the reasons I mentioned before. Blake, talk me through your players. We got some overlap here too.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo what you said on Morrissey and Ehlers, just players I'm excited about, and also players I think you can get at value. That's sort of how I did my top 3 targets. I thought about the value as well.
Yeah.
And then I got, instead of Velarde, who I do think you'll be able to get at value, Mark Scheifele, I think has a higher ceiling, point ceiling. So I think he'll be a better fantasy player. So that's why I'm interested in Mark Scheifele, again, at value. The only thing that stinks about Scheifele is he's center only, right? But
Yep.
I don't care. 20 minutes, top line power play. What are we doing here? This guy's could be had at like pick 90, and that's a dunk for me.
Yep. Any last takeaways on the team, Blake? For myself, yeah, it's really just that I have that little bit of concern about Scott Arniel, that this could be a very defense-first team, and that could take away a little bit of the upside from these guys, and you do see that reflected in my projections here, and how I'm a little bit lower kind of across the board relative to you. Do you have anything that we haven't mentioned yet?
No, I think I'll echo that. Yeah, just temper expectations a little bit. I do think a little bit of regression is coming, but like we just detailed, I mean, a lot of these guys, like they're pretty solid projections, and there's a lot of outs for them to reach that projection. So I'm into the Jets this year.
Yep. Yeah, definitely some individual cases to be made for some exceeding of projection. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's talk about the Washington Capitals. This is a team here where they have made some pretty significant moves this offseason. Key departures: Darcy Kemper leaves from the Pipes. You've got Max Pacioretty moving on. Nick Jensen leaves. And TJ Oshie, maybe. I still haven't seen anything conclusive. I read an article that made it sound like he was literally playing through agony through most of last season. His back is in shambles, basically.
Rooted.
I'd personally be kind of shocked if TJ Oshie is back next year. I have projected it as if he won't play, that he'll hang up the skates. But yeah, we could still see that one come back the other way. Key additions, obviously, with Kemper going to LA, they get Pierre-Luc Dubois in return. Big contract to take on there, but they definitely needed another center. And so Dubois comes in for that purpose. They go out and they get Jacob Chychrun as well from the Senators. Big acquisition on the blue line there. Logan Thompson comes in to form a tandem with Charlie Lindgren. Andrew Mangiapane comes in from the Calgary Flames to give them a little bit more scoring depth. And Matt Roy from the LA Kings. They sign a big free agent signing there. So they definitely have changed the face of this team quite significantly this offseason. I think I know who you're going to say, Blake, but which one of these players do you think is the most interesting for fantasy as an addition?
You know damn well who I'm going to say, Matt Roy. All right. No, I do love Matt Roy, though. This guy's an analytics darling, just in terms of his actual play on the ice. So I think that's a really great signing for the Capitals. But, I love me some PLD this year. And I'm looking forward to having the conversation, because I need to, clear up my love for PLD. I'm not calling this man a 90-point man. All right, folks, come on. All right. But I like me some PLD.
All right, let's talk about coaching. So we've got Spencer Carberry returning as head coach here. It was not really a great season by most of the metrics we like to look at. Bottom 10, just about every chance generation metric. So definitely you have to hope that the additions here move the needle. I have my reservations about that.
Yeah.
Definitely a couple of the guys, like I think strengthening the back end does more than you might think for some of these things. Get the puck out of your own zone, start playing on offense more often. Yeah, there's definitely some positives to the additions on the back end that they've made, and really shoring up the top 4 especially. So I do like that from that standpoint. But yeah, it was an underwhelming first season in terms of the coaching effect on this team, I would say. Coaches can change. Just thinking about what Sheldon Keefe did from season to season in Toronto, he did improve year over year. I think his effect on the Leafs as a whole kind of matured with the team, and his systems improved, and the chance generation improved as a result. So I think that's a possibility here for Spencer Carberry as well. I don't want to rule it out, but also I want to be kind of honest about the fact that it was not good, despite the fact that they squeaked into the playoffs there. So yeah, I don't know if you got any extra notes on the coaching situation for the Capitals, Blake.
Not so much on the coaching situation. Well, maybe. I mean, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I really feel like this Ovechkin goal record has been hampering the team. like their on ice play. And yeah, I've got a couple things I want to talk about there, but I feel like when you inject this much talent and just actual good hockey players onto a team, like that should raise the floor for sure. And we'll see what we got here, because I think you and I were both excited about Carberry going into the season. We're like, wow, yeah, this guy like ran a great power play over in, like, he was Toronto's power play coach. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, we were excited, and then you get like one of the worst offensive teams of the season that somehow made the playoffs. I don't know. Like, they had the 6th worst goal differential in the league, the entire league, not the playoffs. So yeah, but I think, Carberry's got his feet wet. I would expect it to be better, but I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit more. I want to talk about Ovechkin.
For sure. Yeah, let's talk about the power play for a second. Obviously going to be a true top power play, as it has been for years and years with the Capitals. Ovechkin, absolute lock. He'll be out there for basically every minute of every power play. John Carlson does pretty similar stuff most of the time. Ryan Strome, and I think PLD is locked in as well. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. They better put PLD on that power play. Seriously, like, what are we doing? But I think that makes absolute sense. It's just going to be that fifth player, right? So we'll see.
Yeah, I think there's a few options there. Mangiapane Chikrin could be an interesting player if they're looking for another shooter. That could be an interesting option. I think Tom Wilson, the incumbent, kind of makes some sense. They've put him on and then taken him off, and put him on and taken him off at different points throughout the last number of seasons. I don't think he's like a super efficient power play guy. Like, I don't think he's a guy that you're like, oh yeah, we got to get Tom Wilson in on the power play. But if he does, like, that's obviously going to be pretty interesting for a guy like him. Mangiapane, I was a little bit excited about him last year, had him labeled as a sleeper. Everything went terribly for Calgary in general last year. Mangiapane among
until
them.
they traded for Andrei Kuzmenko, and then, buddy, it was blast off.
Absolutely. Well, that's what happens when you get a beautiful head of hair like that in the room. So maybe the Capitals can do something similar. But either way, I think this is definitely a storyline to watch, right? You got to see what that power play is going to look like. I think the 4 guys that we mentioned before, Ovechkin, Carlson, Strom, Dubois, they feel pretty locked in, but the 5th player will definitely be of interest for fantasy purposes, and I could see it going a number of different ways here. Do you have a favorite overall here, Blake?
I've got Wilson for the top power play, but that's more to do with his contract than it is to do with his play. You know what I mean? Like, they're into this guy for term and for a decent amount of money, and I think they want to prioritize him a little bit, right? And this all said, he had a 47% power play share last year, so and he had the money in term last year too. So it doesn't, like, they have some options here. I like Mangiapane. I'd love to see him on power play 1. I like even Connor McMichael, if they can somehow fit him into that top unit. I could see them doing something like that. Like, this was not a good offensive team last year, so you can't just be like, we got Ovi out here for 2 minutes, like, whoever. No, like, we need some X's and O's here, Carberry. Like, you gotta work your magic that you did in Toronto there.
Yep, for sure. And I do think, like, I think they'll figure it out a little bit more this year on the power play specifically. I think they won't be a bottom half unit again this year. So I feel a little bit better about that. It does feel like they've got a little bit more personnel to work with. They got some things they can try, where last year, like, there's just a dearth of talent all the way through the season. Just a lot of inefficient players who've never been good on the power play that they're cycling through. And I think personnel was a big part of how bad that power play was at times last year as well. All right, so let's talk about some individual players and compare notes here. We'll start off with Dylan Strome. I think we're both kind of projecting that he'll stick there with Ovechkin on that line. I've got him for 26 goals, 39 assists. It rounds up to 66 points with the decimals there. For Blake, you've got 29 goals, 40 assists for a solid 69 points, which is pretty nice. I think that you can feel pretty good about Strome. I guess there's a downside case where, like, PLD plays with Ovechkin all year, and Dylan Strome has to play down the lineup with the Mangiapanis and those kind of players. And it's just the heights aren't quite there for Strome. But I feel like it's just such a perfect marriage, and it really came true last season towards the back half of the season where he's just a pure setup guy and Ovechkin's just a pure shooter. And it just seemed to work so well in both on the power play and at even strength towards the back half of the year. I just feel like that is something they're not going to mess with.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think Strome and Ovechkin make sense. They have tenure that, like, Strome played with him in the 22-23 season as well. So it's good to go. I mean, do you remember that? Do you remember that highlight of Dylan Strome where they're in on like it was something crazy. Like he's in on a breakaway and he just like puts the brakes on and waits for Ovechkin to get there. And then he's like,
Yeah.
here you go, man. Like ridiculous. Like shoot the puck, you dingus. I don't know. But I am done hating on Dylan Strome. This guy's, just made me look like an idiot a couple times. So I feel good about that. I think they're going to be paired together, and then we'll see PLD on that second unit.
Yep. And then we got to talk about the great eight himself, Alex Ovechkin. I've got him for 39 goals, 31 assists, squeaking in at 70 points. You're a little bit lower on him there. You've got him for 34 goals, 33 assists, and 67 points. Talk about the upside and downside cases. Do you still think there's an upside case for Ovechkin to get back to more of where he was before, or are we truly in this kind of tail end of his career now, and this is realistically more of a ceiling projection than anything else?
Yeah, the latter. I think this is ceiling for Ovechkin. I'm really down on Ovechkin this year. I don't like in a category league. What are we talking about? Like, and he's great in that. And obviously, like this is still a guy that's probably going to get 30 goals, right? So that's how down I am. I think like
Right.
his worst is probably like a 55 to 65 point season. I think that's what we're looking at there. But the thing about Ovechkin is like, as players age, like they have to change their game. Like you look at Sid Crosby and what he's able to do and how he's able to stay relevant. Ovechkin is not doing that. This guy literally just lumbers into the offensive zone and calls for the puck, right? And they're getting it to him, right? But it's so stagnant. And I feel like this is what I was talking about when I was just talking about the coaching there. But like them trying to get him this record, I feel like they're doing that at the expense of like team offense. And I think we saw that a little bit, when they thought they had a chance of getting into the playoffs, they stopped putting Ovechkin out in 3-on-3 overtimes. Like he's not out there in overtimes. He's not out there in the last minute of games sometimes. And I think that says it all, right? Like this is a guy, like if Carberry really wants to make this team better, he needs to deprioritize Ovechkin a little bit. Like Ovechkin needs to be on the second line, in my opinion. And I didn't project him that way, but I'm just like thinking out loud, like if I could see that happening, right? Like deprioritize Ovechkin a little bit, just give him his 2 minutes on the power play. That's where he's going to make his bacon, right? And supplement his goal scoring there. But he's not really a big part of the offense. He can't be relied on defensively. Like he's cherry picking, like you play like ice hockey, these guys, like just big old guy up at the blue line, like calling for the puck, that's what Ovechkin's doing. So I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a different team this year. And I do think that there's a good chance Ovechkin gets deprioritized.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I mean, I've still got him projected to score more than 10 goals, 10 goals more than anybody else on the team. So I still think like he is that guy in terms of they need to score goals at some point, and he's the most likely candidate to
He's
do
the
that on the
best.
team. So yeah, like if you're demoting him to the second line, are you putting like Connor McMichael on the top line and expecting him to become a 30 plus goal scorer next year? Like, I mean, maybe, but I think that's a bit more of a leap than to just kind of let Ovechkin be Ovechkin. Yep. Yeah, he's not gonna do anything for you defensively, but at least he's gonna score some goals for you on a team that frankly kind of needs them.
What'd you get him for ice time, Nate?
Overall, I've got him for 1945.
Right. Yeah, I had him for 19, and I think that's even a little bit high. I could see Ovechkin down at like 18 this year. Just deprioritize a little bit at 5-on-5. That's my 2 cents. I mean, I just if they want to win, like they can't have this lumbering oaf out there. And he is like he can't skate, and I don't know that it's injury related, right? I love Ovechkin, don't get me wrong, and like this guy's the best goal scorer ever, right? And I feel like he's going to get that record, but I mean, if this team wants to win, they got to maybe do something a little different.
Fair enough. All right. Tom Wilson, we actually have a pretty big disparity on the goals scored here. I've got him for 28 goals and
Oh, wow.
23 assists for 51 points. You've gone from 19 goals, 29 assists for 48 points. So let's do a little contrast and compare here. First off, what's your overall time on ice? I've gone for 1845.
I've got him for just under 18.
Okay, so you're a little bit lower on the ice time overall. What's the shooting percentage? I've got him at 13.9%.
On the season, I've got him for 11.1.
Okay, so you're definitely lower on his efficiency as a shooter overall, so that's definitely going to hurt him. And your total shots on goal, I've got him for 199.
Where are my shots? Oh my God. 170.
170. Okay, so both less efficient and shooting a lot less. You've got him for, which makes up the difference there. Interesting, I guess. What's your even strength shots per 60? I've got him at 7.5.
6.8.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not huge, but yeah, across both even strength and on the power play, I guess it adds up. Okay. Yeah, I feel like decent about Wilson, assuming he's not injured, assuming that he probably is the other member of that top line, playing with Strome, who I think is a fine setup man at this point. Yeah, I feel decent about taking the swing on Tom Wilson this year, especially obviously in any sort of format that supports bangers. But we got to talk about your guy. We got to talk about PLD. I've got him for 23 goals, 28 assists, 51 points. You've got him all the way up at 26 goals, 36 assists for 62 points. Big difference between us there. Probably one of the bigger ones we'll have across all of the players in that we both projected on the year. So let's dig in, Blake. I've got him for 17 minutes and 15 seconds average time on ice. How do you have that sorted for him?
Yeah, I've got him for like 17:45 or something, like 17:50. I've got him.
Okay.
So nothing
So
crazy
you've
there.
actually not gotten too far out on the average time on ice, which is what I thought it might be. I've got him for 3 minutes on the power play. You got him for more than that or about that?
Let me look. PLD, I've got, 3. I've got him for 3.1 is what I put. So just over 3. So full power play 1 treatment there for PLD.
Yeah. I guess let's check in on the IPP and the on-ice shooting percentage. So at even strength, I've got him at 65% IPP, 9.5% on-ice shooting percentage.
Even strength, 70% IPP and 9.87 on-ice shooting percentage for PLD. So
And
higher
then,
IPP, obviously.
Yeah. And then on power play, I've got him for 53% IPP, 13.25% on-ice shooting percentage.
Yeah, 58% IPP and 13.5.
Okay, so you're kind of just a little bit higher across the board, a little bit more ice time, a little bit more efficient. You've basically just got him being better than he was, a lot better than he was last year. Obviously,
yeah.
New situation, maybe bringing some life to him there. My thing with PLD is I just feel like I can't trust him. It's been multiple situations. This stop in LA, I read like an article in the off season. He was like talking about how rejuvenated he was. He wanted to be in this city. Like this is his dream place to play hockey for the rest of his career. And then he goes out and lays an absolute egg and like refuses to play in the system. I'm just very concerned about the makeup of this player and how he's going to be used by a new coach over time. So I'm definitely baking that in and kind of keeping him a little bit more towards the last couple of years than what he was able to do earlier in his career.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I really think that his situation in LA, he was not given the keys. He was not given any opportunity. Like he didn't get power play 1. I mean, his power play share on the year, 42%, which is not good. That's power play 2 pretty much all year. And he was playing on the third line. So, and that was pretty consistent throughout. Like, I don't remember a time last year where they're like, let's see what PLD can do, our $8 million man. No, they just never, like, he never got to do what he's good at doing, right? And this is a player that he's had 3 60+ seasons, right? Like this is this is in the wheelhouse, and this is one thing I wanted to say. Like when I'm higher on PLD, first off, it's because he's almost off the board when it's coming to ADP. Like people aren't like going out of their way to get PLD, so I think you can get him at major value whenever you want, pretty much. And this is a guy who got 40 points last year in a really muted season. I also think that the narrative surrounding PLD is not exactly accurate. Like, or I think it's up in the air depending on what you read or what you hear. But like, I've read things about player like Matt Roy, for instance, did an interview where he talked about PLD, and he's like, this guy was a great teammate. There was no problem whatsoever. I was super stoked to hear that he was coming with me to this team. Dylan Strome I've read something about Dylan Strome. They roomed together at the World Juniors. Like he loved PLD. Right. And then I look at what Rob Blake said too. He took responsibility for not putting PLD in a position to succeed. And then he basically got squeezed out. Right. So I'm not projecting a huge, projection on this guy. I'm projecting 62 points, right? 62.4 points for PLD. That's in his wheelhouse. That's something he's done before. And all he needs to get there is opportunity. Right. He had a down season, first off, in all his metrics, his shots, his chances, but his IPP went up. And that's what happens when you're the clearly best player on your line and you have to do everything. Right. And that's what PLD had to do last year. And his line mates will be marginally better this year. I'm not going to say his line mates are going to be great, but he's going to be on for more time. And he needs that power play one, right? This projection goes to hell if he doesn't get power play one, but it's just someone I like. He's a rush player. I'm really big into rush players this year, and Washington sorely needs a player like that. Whether he gets the OV assignment or line 2, I think he's going to be prioritized more, and they got to do it. They're into this man for some money now.
Yeah. I guess my only pushback would be there, like Philip Deneau kind of had that exact role in LA and like just completely outproduce PLD and like shouldn't be able to do that based on their apparent skill levels. So that would be my pushback, I guess, is like, okay, we have two different players who played with the same players. Philip Deneau outperformed PLD, and we're not drafting him anywhere near this, and we're not projecting him for anywhere near this. And also you come to Washington where unless they do take a significant step, like the shot metrics, like the on ice metrics, are not going to be super hot for PLD across the board again. So that's the part that would be my, I guess, minor rebuttal to what you're saying there, and the reason that I would have them significantly lower than you.
Yeah. What did you project them for? I got it right in front of me. I can't see. 51 points.
51. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of Philip Deneau, though, they're different kind of players, right? Deneau is he's a shutdown center. PLD is like a rusher. He's like a rusher, like with offensive flair. He's a more offensive player than Deneau. So I don't know. I feel like Deneau fit the system that McClellan and then Hiller wanted to do a hell of a lot more than PLD. And PLD is the type of player that needs a certain type of role and line mates that kind of match him. And I don't think he received that in LA. Yeah. Will he get it in Washington? I don't know.
Yeah, that's obviously the other part for me is like I'm just unconvinced this is like the offensive environment in which a player whose ceiling previously has been like in the mid 60s to really break out or really even approach that again after multiple years being below that. Anyway, we will probably talk on PLD many more times throughout the year, so we'll put a pin in that discussion for a bit. Connor McMichael, Andrew Mangiapane, we both have like high 30s, low 40s point projections on. These are guys I think you can probably stream at certain points, but probably not going to be anything more. I will note, like, Connor McMichael was a decently highly rated prospect. He's kind of taken the long road through the Capitals organization, but like there are some decent underlying metrics here. Like I've got him for a 71% even strength IPP. So if the minutes do come up, you could see a scenario in which McMichael takes another step this year and actually does become somewhat fantasy relevant this year. If PLD scores 62, honestly, then I would assume that McMichael is actually a part of that and probably scoring 50 plus. So, that would be an interesting scenario where you could say that there might be another level heretofore unseen for Connor McMichael. Let's talk about the defenseman here. I think Matt Roy and Rasmus Sandin you can safely not worry about for fantasy purposes. They're going to be behind Carlson and now Jacob Chikrin. John Carlson, we do have a pretty solid disparity on here. I've got him for 15 goals, 38 assists, 53 points. You got him for 13 goals, but 48 assists, up to 61 points. So 8 point difference between our projections on John Carlson. What do you have for the power play overall? I guess we could start there. I've got him for 22 power play points.
Yep, 23 for me.
Okay. So it's mostly an even strength deal. I've got him for 19 minutes at even strength with a 41% IPP.
I've got him under that. So I've got him at just under 19 with a 45% IPP.
It's a little bit more efficient there, getting him a little bit more. On ice shooting percentage at 10%.
10.7. So there you go.
Okay. So that's going to be part of it. And then I've got on ice shots for at 28.
On ice shots for, yeah. I've got 31.
Okay, so that's a big difference there, combined with the 0.7% on ice shooting percentage. So it's basically just that even strength there that we would disagree the most. I think Carlson did show some signs last year of being a player in decline. Mm-hmm. I think he's still going to be fine. I think he's good, but I don't think he's defining the offense at even strength the same way. We've seen year over year decline now a couple of years running, and so that's why I'm a little bit cautious on Carlson. With my projection there. Jacob Chikrin, the other one. Yeah, I'm pretty low. I think I'm just lower kind of across the board on the team here again than you are, Blake. I've gone for 12 goals, 27 assists, 39 points. Basically, not touching the top power play is what I have him for. You've got him for 15 goals, 32 assists, and 47 points. So you're obviously a little bit higher on him there. Talk to me about what you see as the ceiling case here.
I mean, to me, his ceiling case is pretty much what he did last year. You know what I mean? And I don't know that this is a ceiling projection. Maybe there's a few more assists that he can accrue, right? But yeah, I honestly think we're looking at what we looked at last year. But I mean, obviously, he's the next man up if Carlson is faltering or he's injured. So I did bake in a little bit of that time into his power play time. Like I think Chikrin, I gave him 14 power play points, which, you know, yeah,
he got 11.
He got 16 last year in Ottawa. He saw power play 1. I could see that happening again in Washington, which again really stinks, right? Yeah. Like this is a guy that could be a fantasy stud if he was a clear number 1 power play guy and number 1 defenseman on a team, but it's just not happening. It's a great hockey trade for the Caps, but yeah, it's going to suck for fantasy, unfortunately. But I'm still loving Chikrin later on, like as your 3rd or 4th D. Like this is a double-digit goal guy, no matter where he plays, in my opinion. He's a really good defenseman, and the Prifs are reasonable, so you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, I mean, when it comes out, what did I have him for? Yeah, 47. That's probably ceiling. That's ceiling Chikrin there. I think, you know, probably closer to 40. You know, if nothing goes right.
Yeah, I'm looking at my even strength numbers here. I'm trying to see where I'm being low on him. I think my biggest problem is that he's kind of consistently, even last year in Ottawa, where it was a good even strength environment, he had a low on ice shooting percentage. Maybe that was just like a 1-year blip, but I've got him right around that again, just because I don't see the current setup in Washington being that great, and so that's a bit of it as well for me, where I don't have a strong on ice shooting percentage for him at even strength. I do think he's going to get a lot of minutes at even strength. I think they brought him in there to be a top pair defenseman alongside John Carlson. But yeah, that's the part for me where I'm just kind of a little bit unsure. I think there is definitely some headroom beyond this, and I may look at this again just to give him a little bit more of a bump up, because I do think that there's upside with the player. I love the player. I love the talent. I love the shots that he generates as well. So I don't want to be like really underweight on Chikrin overall. Yeah, it's a case where I'm not in love with the environment, with the fact that Carlson is pretty entrenched, I think, still as the top power play guy. But I do love the player in Chikrin, and I do think that, you know, if the team breaks right, if Washington as a team really breaks right and they take a step as a team and the offensive environment improves as a team, then you've got a ceiling case for Chikrin where you're actually pretty excited, even if he isn't on the top power play. So, yeah, I might look at that one a little bit more just to see if I can't squeeze out a few more points for Chikrin at even strength.
I mean, Ottawa, they're a bunch of chuckers. You know, like just shots to the net, shots at the net, but they had a low efficiency, right? And
Yeah.
that was last year. So I mean, there's a little bit of the on ice shooting percentage right there. Like you get guys that are a bit more efficient, right? Like Dylan Strome, like even Tom Wilson or Ovechkin, if he can kind of get cooking again here. Like I could see it bumping up. Maybe I've got it a little too high, even to your point. Like maybe being low, like maybe it's somewhere in between.
Yep. Could be. All right, top three targets. My top target is going to be Ovechkin because I think that people are going to be just super scared at this point. And I'm not like scared that he's going to fall off the cliff a little bit like you're talking about. I just think like this organization has just the utmost respect for what
Oh
he's
yeah.
done for his chasing the goal record. I personally, I don't see a scenario in which they deprioritize him at all while he's chasing a goal record. So I think that Ovechkin is going to fall. Like in our best ball drafts, he's going in the 4th round. Feels pretty good there. He's going to get you shots, going to get you hits, going to do all that. So I'm actually pretty in on Ovechkin. John Carlson, for where he's going, like it seems like there's even more. Like it feels like everybody's just like completely out on John Carlson.
Yeah.
Like he's like a 40-point defenseman.
Mhm.
I definitely don't think he's that. I definitely think this is another player that the organization still loves and will still put out on the top power play all the time. So I still like John Carlson a fair bit. And then Dylan Strome as the last one, as we mentioned. I just think that this is actually a pretty solid player in a pretty good spot. And he's going to feed Ovechkin for a bunch of goals this year at even strength and on the power play.
Yep. Yeah, in terms of mine, yeah, a little different this time around. PLD, we already talked about that. And again, just to clarify, like I'm projecting PLD for 62 points. Okay, so it's not an insane, like I'm not going out of my mind here, but like
we all heard 82.
Oh my God, no. All right. You know what? When he hits point per game, we'll all be wrong, but I'll be happy. All right. So yeah, PLD, I like that. Just a value there. Obviously in bangers leagues, like this guy's great. Dylan Strome, I can't disparage the man anymore. I think he like exactly like you said there. And then I do have Chikrin on there for my third one because I'm baking in just that insurance in case not even just Carlson gets injured, but if he falters, right? If that power play is not cooking, you got a premier power play one quarterback waiting in the wings, right? And they could even throw him on as that 5th player on the power play, right? So there are some outs there for Chikrin to get a decent fantasy season here, and I'm in on it because again, you can get him very late.
Yep. Yeah, don't mind that at all. All right, we need to keep rolling. This is
We're getting
already
long,
turning
Nate. I
into a
know.
beefer, but honestly, I've said it before. Like, I do really think that these are the most important episodes that we do every single year. They really set the tone for the season in my mind, kind of help me solidify what I'm thinking about each team as we talk it out together. And hopefully, it does some of the same things for the people, the good listeners, the good viewers of the channel. So let's talk about Vegas as we crest the hour mark on this podcast.
Whoopsie
Key
doodle.
departures. Jonathan Marchessault and Chandler Stevenson, 2 members of the top 6 there coming out. So definitely some changes in the Vegas forward core. Key additions, obviously going back to the trade deadline, they added Thomas Hertl and they added Noah Hannafin. So we'll include those as they come into their first full season here for the Vegas Golden Knights. I also went out and got Alexander Holtz, who was a pretty highly ranked prospect coming in, but never really caught on in New Jersey. Still pretty young, so some reason to be potentially excited that he could find his way back into a scoring role here in Vegas. And then Ilya Samsonov comes in to join Aiden Hill as the tandem for the Golden Knights here. Who are you most interested in? What do you think moves the needle the most for the Golden Knights in terms of these additions and departures?
They're all great additions. I mean, we talked about Thomas Hertl last season. It's great. I mean, obviously with the departure of Marchessault and to a lesser extent Stevenson, it gets a little bit, not as exciting, right? But Hertl's a nice prize there. And Noah Hannafin was great at the end of the season. That's a player I'm excited to talk about here. And Holtz, honestly, this is, again, another player we'll talk about, but it's a guy that I think has a lot of potential, and it's definitely going to depend where he's deployed in the lineup. But I think there's an upside case here for Alexander Holtz for sure. And then Samsonov. I mean, tell me what do you like about Samsonov, Nate?
Yeah, I dare not comment
All
on
right, there you go.
Ilya Samsonov, but I will comment on Bruce Cassidy returning as head coach. Probably a top 5 coach in the league, honestly, when all is said and done. If you look across the league, I really don't think there's much better than Bruce Cassidy around the league. So really I think that this kind of sets a baseline for the team when you have a coach like this that you really feel like you can rely on. You really do feel like the players become a little bit more interchangeable,
Yeah.
that they can weather the loss of two members of the top six in Stevenson and Marchessault. So I think it just for me, it gives me a little bit more confidence to not like overreact to the loss of two members, two big time scoring members of this team,
Yeah.
and to kind of still be a little bit optimistic about the scoring potential of the team. Do you feel similarly, Blake?
Yeah, I think that. So obviously, like this guy's got acumen. He's like you said, he's one of the top 5 coaches in the league. Plus, they've got good people at every position, right? I think there's every reason to think that Vegas is just going to do their thing, right? Be in the upper third of the league, make the playoffs, and then piss us all off and toot in our faces at the trade deadline. I don't know what's going on, Mark Stone, buddy. No. But yeah, he's getting nipple replacement surgery, Mark Stone, right before the playoffs. He'll get healthy, and then we'll see. I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, I think there's reason to be optimistic, and they're going to be on the hunt no matter what with a coach like this.
For sure. All right, let's talk through the power play. I think this is probably still a true top power play, but I don't know, Blake. Do you see any chance that they could split things up? They definitely have, like, you would kind of looking at this team, think that you have Jack Eichel, you have Thomas Hertl, you have William Karlsson, who might all be among the top players that you consider to be on a power play. And so when you have that situation where you have 3 centers who are all guys that you might see on a top power play, would they consider splitting things up a little bit, going to some sort of 1A, 1B situation? How much credence do you give to that line of thought, or do you think that this should be business as normal, even with the loss of Marchessault?
God, I hope not. Why do these coaches have to get cute? All right. You've got an elite 5 players, put your best 5 players out on the ice and put them out there for 1:45. What the hell? But yeah, I think it's going to be a clear 1A again. I mean, Jack Eichel, just looking at his power play share, like this guy does 73% power play share, which is exactly what he needs when you have a player like that. And, it doesn't matter. They like, because they have 3 centers, like these guys can take on different roles. Like William Karlsson, like, yeah, he's been on the power play at times in the past. Like, he doesn't need to be on power play 1. You can go do something else. Although I've projected him for power play 1, like that, like there's other things he can do and other assets that he brings to the game. So I don't think that's going to be a problem with their 3 centers there.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't have it projected that way. I do have it projected for Eichel to get a ridiculous amount of power play time.
Oh, yeah.
Once again next year. I think Eichel, Stone, and Hertl are locked in on the top unit. Personally, you have the same feelings there, Blake?
Yep. I don't see any reason why not.
Yeah, so just in terms of the time on ice, I have Eichel for 4 minutes power play time on ice. I have Stone for 3 minutes 45 seconds power play time on ice, and I have Hertl at 3 minutes 15 seconds time on ice, and those are definitely the leaders for me there. For the power play quarterback, I think this is probably the most interesting piece of the puzzle here, assuming that it is a true top power play the way that we have it projected. It's basically Noah Hannafin or Shea Theodore. I think Alex Pietrangelo is sadly on the outs here. I don't even know if he'll get any power play time. Maybe he'll be on a 2 defenseman second unit. But Hannafin or Theodore is the question of the day, Blake.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm in line with your thought process, but I might not be in line with what I think will actually happen. So to me, Theodore is a clear best offensive defenseman on the team. He should be the power play 1 quarterback. But Bruce Cassidy didn't give a damn when it came to the playoffs running, when things were on the line. He threw Noah Hannafin out there, right? And Noah Hannafin is a very capable power play quarterback as well. It's just Theodore is elite. Right. He's an elite offensive player, and he's proven that already. One of the things I look at, though, is their contract, right? Like Theodore's in a contract year. He's got 1 more year. They're locked into Hannafin for term, right? So is it a changing of the guard? Are they looking at maybe getting off Theodore, halfway through the season or whatever, or seeing what they have in Hannafin? And so it were those things, basically the playoff deployment and, the contract, make me think that Hannafin is going to be the one getting power play 1. But that said, I projected them kind of eating into each other's power play time. Like I have Hannafin for 2 minutes and 45 seconds, and I have Shea Theodore for like 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So it's not like a true, like I could see them flip-flopping back and forth a little bit because Theodore should be on power play 1. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. The way I ended up with it after mulling it over for far too long was I did end up with Theodore a little bit ahead. I have him for 3 minutes and Hannafin for 2.5.
Mm.
Yeah, I could still be convinced the other way, to flip it, exactly the other way, because I don't think it's settled. I think that Hannafin made some sense for them in that particular case. Theodore coming back from injuries and things like that. There are some excuses you can make, and I
Yeah.
do, the same as you, believe that Theodore is the better offensive defenseman. So yeah, definitely something to consider there. I will say, like, their results on the power play are actually pretty similar. It's Theodore's better at even strength, like miles better at even strength. But on the power play, like, their results are actually not that dissimilar in my mind. So that could be a reason that Hannafin actually does stick there. In the end, I've got 18.5 power play points for Theodore and 16.7 for Hannafin. So, like, the way that I have it working out in the end is I do think that there will be some back and forth throughout the season. Both will get power play 1 time at some point. Yeah, I think they will eat each other's minutes and cannibalize a little bit of value from each other. I do think Theodore is good enough at even strength to make it worthwhile, though. We will get there as well, but we do also have to figure out who's going to be the fourth forward on this top power play that we're positing here. William Karlsson, Alexander Holtz, Victor Olofsson, who they picked up for cheap. He's been a bomber on a power play before. And Ivan Barbashev could be another option as well. Blake, talk to me. Who you got here?
I think for me, I think the safe play is Karlsson, William Karlsson, right? He's done that before. Again, he had just an uber efficient season last year, just going off, like, doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I think for the start of the season, I would expect to see William Karlsson there. But I mean, Barbashev's been there. Maybe they want to see what they have in Alexander Holtz and obviously Victor Olofsson. This is a guy that we've been excited about 2 years ago. All right. What have you done for me lately, Victor Olofsson? But obviously this guy's got a cannon. He's built for the power play. That's what he does. So I don't know. It all depends on what Cassidy wants to do there. He just better keep it as a true number 1 power play. My money's on William Karlsson to start.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. It would leave them without, like, I guess they could go Nicolas Roy for the center on the second power play unit. Could be. That would leave them without, like, Karlsson makes a lot of sense as the center on the second unit, which would maybe be a reason. I don't know how much stock I put into that idea, but it could be a reason to keep him off the top power play. I kind of have it. I've hedged my bets kind of all across the board here. I have Karlsson for 2 minutes, 15 seconds power play time on ice. I have Barbashev for 2 minutes. I do think there's outs for Holtz or Olofsson to be like a shooter on that power play if they want to go that route. I could see a whole bunch of different ways that could go. They could even go for like a net front guy. There's a lot of different ways that I could see this playing out, but definitely something that you're probably going to want to watch, because if it is a true top power play and they are playing the top power play a ton, then that fourth forward is going to be pretty valuable for sure. All right, let's get into the projections here. I was really shocked, honestly, how well Jack Eichel came out in my projections. Nice. He's coming in as one of my higher ranked players in most point setups this year. Shoots a ton, gets that 4 minutes power play time, which is just, leagues above most of the rest of the league. That's truly elite power play deployment, so that's important. Also getting a ton of even strength time, so that's important. Comes out to 38 goals, 49 assists, 87 points, and lots of peripherals there, which really works for him in a lot of formats. 40 goals, 45 assists, 85 points for you. I just feel really solid about Jack Eichel, even with Marchessault moving on. I just don't think... I think he's the driver, and Marchessault had a really good year playing alongside Jack Eichel. That's kind of how I view that situation. How do you feel, Blake?
Yeah, he's absolutely the driver, right? This is the guy with all the entries, all the chances, right? And all the goals, right? This is a very unique player, like, and guys like Eichel, should be at the top of your draft board, right? Because his shots to goal per 60, crazy. His individual scoring chances per 60, like, really good, right? And then he's doing the other things as well. He's driving the offense himself, right? So this is a player we got to be in on. Plus, like you said, the power play time, bang. I think I've got a pretty conservative projection for him because, like, the shots on goal per 60 went up at 5-on-5, like, back up to elite levels, right? Like in 2022-23, it was at 9.79. This last year was back up to 11.61, which is the highest he's ever had, but it was pretty damn sustainable, right? And I think it's going to be I think it'll be 10 or over, right? And that's what did I put him for here? Now this is great podcasting, folks. But yeah, I got him for 11. So I put him for 11, and I think that's reasonable. 11.9 shooting percentage, 74% IPP, because again, like his IPP last year, 79%. Sheesh. Yep. And that's with pretty damn good players like Marchessault and Barbashev, right? So I think 74 makes total sense. He's still going to be the guy stirring the drink there. The straw stirring the drink. Guys don't stir the drink. All right. I'm fixing that for myself. But yeah, I just feel like there's so many outs. This to me is like a very mid projection for Eichel. I think Eichel has 100 points in him if everything goes crazy, right? I could see that. I'm not projecting that, but I think he has that ceiling.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know if I see the 100-point ceiling. I think he'd have to be more efficient. The team would have to be more efficient. Like with great line mates, I think he could have that. Like if he had another elite line mate on that line, then maybe I could see that. Yeah, it would have to be a pretty monstrous power play year. I've already got him for 30 power play points to get to 87, so I have to be pretty monstrous on the power play. But yeah, overall, like regardless, I think Eichel is going to be a value in drafts this year. Like I think you're in a spot where you can like get a couple of wingers in your first 2 rounds and come back with Eichel in the third and just feel like you've absolutely crushed. I think that's going to be a play for me in a few leagues this year, and I'm going to be pretty happy with it. Ivan Barbashev probably going to play alongside Eichel and be a beneficiary there. We've got him projected pretty similarly. 19 goals, 26 assists, 45 points for me, 17 goals and 26 assists for 43 points for you. I think he's just a streamer. Same thing we've talked about many times with Ivan Barbashev. You got anything additional on the Barbie?
He's a beefer. Come on, Bobby. Let's go party. That's all I got. I didn't have the high note tonight. All right. That's fine.
All right. We'll forgive you. Mark Stone, 25 goals, 47 assists, 72 points for me as an 82-game pace. We have to build in the fact that he's not going to play from the trade deadline until the end of the season. But 25 goals, 50 assists, 75-point pace for you. What's your take on Stone? I know when we talked last year, you were like, this is actually a guy that I'm building in the injury narrative a bit and like being pretty afraid to draft him. But I feel like that is kind of built into his ADP on a lot of sites. So do you think that you'll swim in those waters at all this year?
No. Mark Stone might be the only player that's on my do not draft list. I'm just not here for it. Like it's not worth it to me. Yeah, I know when a player gets injured, like you can use it as a streaming spot and there's some value that can come from that, but I just don't want the headache. I really don't. Like, and like you said, this guy is at value, but it doesn't feel good coming out of your draft. And you're like, I got Mark Stone with my 8th pick. And it's like, who the hell cares? Right. Like the other thing is Mark Stone, like he's not a great shooter. He's not a good chance generator, right? He's basically like, he facilitates offense for his teammates, right?
Yep.
But he's losing his center in Chandler Stevenson, right? Bang! So he's losing that man. Who does he play with, right? It's going to be Thomas Hertl, right? Which actually a nice little piece there. But I'm just not here for it. Like he'll probably play another 56 games, 60 games. It's just I'm not here for it. That's pretty much all I got to say. Like it's a player that lives off efficiency and the efficiency of his teammates, and that's risky biscuit for me.
Fair enough. Yeah, I do think it's risky. Depending on the league, there might be like a league you're in where everybody's just like completely uninterested. Like there's a price on every player where I'm going to be interested, right?
Yeah.
I will take the production when I can get it, and if when he inevitably goes off because his back flares up again,
nipples.
Yeah, when he goes off for that surgery, I'll just put him on the IR and I'll find somebody else. But I can use his production in the meantime if I get it cheap enough. So I'm not going to be all the way out on Mark Stone, but I'm definitely not going to be prioritizing him. Thomas Hertl, 27 goals, 38 assists, and that comes out to 65 points for me. 28 goals, 33 assists, 61 points for you. I'm relatively in on Thomas Hurdle, but I don't think there's really a ceiling here, is where I'm at. He's not going to benefit away from the power play anyway. He's not going to benefit from Eichel, who's the biggest play driver here. The wingers are very suspect, especially once you get past Barbashev and Stone. Like, Stone could even play with Eichel for chunks of the year and really take away from Hurdle's ceiling. So I really do feel like Hurdle's a good enough player to sustain this. We saw him do it in San Jose with literally no one around him. So I think he can sustain this, but I really don't feel like there's like some massive ceiling here for Thomas Hurdle where he goes off for like 70 plus points.
Yep, totally agree. I mean, he was getting big numbers in San Jose, right? And in Vegas, it's not really, he's not needed to do that, right? He's not the only guy in town. So I think his access to the power play that's kind of where his value lies. And I do think that, I mean, Vegas power play, it wasn't very good last year. So I think, that could bump up a little bit just to even be more mid, right? Like maybe like, I think they're around like 21st. Like if they could get around like 15, that's fine. That's going to benefit everybody, including Hurdle. But yeah, I think it's just a safe player. Hurdle to me is a boring player that is going to go out there and give you some value, give you exactly what you drafted him for.
Yep, fair enough. Player that I do have a little bit of love for here, Pavel Dorofeyev. We both have him for 23 goals, not a lot of assists, but like in the high 30s, low 40s for points. I mean, if Dorofeyev could be the guy, the fourth forward on that power play, then we're really talking about something that I could get interested in, because I don't know what you have him for, but I have him for 4 power play points. So if you got, 15, then all of a sudden we're pushing him up into the 50-point range, and you're talking about a guy who could actually live in your lineup.
Yep.
Definitely a guy who generates shots, a guy who's actually relatively efficient as well across the board. So yeah, there's definitely scenarios here for me in which Dorofeyev is the guy that you want outside of the really well-known names in Vegas. So that's a player that I'm putting a little star beside it and watching the early deployment.
Yep, absolutely. I don't have too much more to add. It's just going to be an opportunity play. If he gets that opportunity, then we'll see what happens, right? That's the level we're at with Dorofeyev right now. So I think you and I are both pretty safe on our projections here. We're not going to, this is one thing I learned from my projections last year, is like, don't just expect players to take a massive step, right? When they've never done it before. I don't care if I'm 1 year off, right? Like, I'm not going to just project a player to go, oh, now he's 55-point Pavel Dorofeyev because I said so. It's like, no, he has never shown that to us, right? Like we need to see it first. So that said, this might be a guy you want to, like you said, you put him on your watch list, and if he starts popping off, you pick him up.
Yeah, for context, I have him for 14 minutes, 15 seconds average time on ice. So any scenario in which he's pushing 17 minutes, now you're really talking about a player that could be relevant for fantasy. Either way, I still think he's probably going to be streamable at some points. We might be talking about him in the waiver wire podcasts at points throughout the season. Alexander Holtz, as we mentioned, comes over from the New Jersey Devils. We've both got relatively uninspiring projections on him. I've got 17 goals, 15 assists, 32 points. You've got 19, 18, 37. Yeah, I just think that this is really dependent on the player himself taking another step for him to be relevant for fantasy. Definitely, I think there's opportunity. He could just go on the top line with Eichel, be an instant connection, be Jonathan Marchessault. Like, that's, I think, within the realm of possibilities. I don't think it's one of the more likely possibilities for this player, but definitely there's a ceiling here. Player that has shown some ability to generate some chances. Not anything like super exciting that's making me, really get up out of my seat at this point and stand on business for Alexander Holtz. But I do think that there's something to watch here, and especially if he gets that power play, especially if he gets that Eichel deployment, those are going to be the two things to watch.
Yeah, I echo all that, and there is a few things to me with Holtz that really stand out, and it's his rush play, right? It's his zone entries, it's all that stuff, right? He's an offense driver, right? And granted, he's been on third line, right? He's been on the third line with the Devils. So is he that guy if he plays with Jack Eichel? No, Eichel's that guy, right? So he's going to have to do something a little bit different. But I do think there's a world where he does get that top line deployment and maybe power play too. And that might be enough, right? That might be enough to make him relevant, certainly stream worthy. But I mean, I've got him for 35.5 points. I could see 45. I mean, if everything goes really well, maybe 50. Dang. I mean, that'd be pretty damn nice.
Yeah, that would be probably a ceiling scenario for him
Mhm.
under my book, but yeah, it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. William Karlsson, I think, going to be pretty boring, but definitely streamable, playable in deeper leagues. 21 goals, 30 assists for 51 points is what I have him for. Yeah, I think Karlsson just kind of is who he is. He ran hot last year and was pretty exciting for that reason, but in a more normal season, in a season where, again, you've got Thomas Hurdle as the center over top of him on the second line, pushing
Yeah.
Karlsson down the lineup a little bit, hard to get excited about the upside for William Karlsson.
Yeah, it's just there's less of a pathway for him to points. Now I think it's like we need you to be a role player, buddy. Like go out there and play your role, right? And he's an efficient player, so we're still going to get, like you said, 20 goals. I think that makes total sense. But yeah, I think the days of William Karlsson popping off and being like a number one streamer with benefits are probably gone.
Yep. All right, so let's talk through Theodore and Hannafin. We already talked through the potential power play and how that might play out, but in terms of the actual projections, I've gone for 10 goals, 37 assists for 47 points. You've gone for 10 goals, 39 assists for 49 points. And Theodore, we both came out basically
Yeah,
identical, 13 goals, 48 assists,
that's a crazy
61 points.
projection.
That
Yeah,
is pretty crazy overall, especially considering that we didn't
yeah,
actually have the power play the exact same. So, either way, it's pretty clear to us that Theodore is the guy, honestly, probably a top 5 defenseman in the league at generating things at even strength. A little bit more middle of the road in terms of being a top power play quarterback, but still good, still very good. But yeah, the even strength numbers from Theodore are just absolutely elite in terms of shot generation, in terms of the IPP. I have him for a 54% IPP. That's like Yossi Makar levels, are like the only other guys who kind of match that kind of IPP. And then obviously, like the team itself generates chances, and so Theodore getting in on 54% of that offense and a ton of ice time at even strength just equals these potential big numbers. The problem with Theodore is that he doesn't hit whatsoever. His block numbers are pretty solid, shots on goal numbers are pretty solid, but if he doesn't get the top power play, then it really starts to feel a little bit hollow in terms of the point production. You're going to get 50 plus points, but you're going to feel like not so great about it. If he gets power play one all year, then you're probably going to love where you draft Shea Theodore this year. But yeah, that's going to be kind of the tipping point for both. How do you feel about drafting these guys? Like, are you drafting them with any certainty? Do you think that, in the best balls that you've been a part of, have you been feeling confident about drafting either of them, where they're going? How do you feel about the situation overall?
I like where they're going. And even though I've projected Hannafin to get top power play, I have Theodore for more points, right? Because of what you said, he's an elite, offense production at even strength. It's amazing, right? He's just got to stay healthy. So I'm not too worried about the power play there for Theodore, but I would draft Theodore before Hannafin, but I'm not targeting them. You know what I mean? Because of the situation we described, they're going to cannibalize each other a little bit, right? Even if it's just for half the season, that's still a problem, right? Like
Yeah.
we want to see, like you said about Jack Eichel, we want to see over 3 minutes guaranteed power play one ice time, right? Because that's a huge factor in their offensive production. So I've drafted Hannafin in a bunch of spots in the best ball leagues because he's still there, right? And in my mind, I'm like, he's going to get power play one. And it's like pick 173. And I've got Hannafin staring at me like that's a no-brainer. I'm picking him up. So, but they're certainly not guys I'm targeting. These are both guys to me that you can get if your top tier targets go away.
Yep. Yeah, and we will mention Alex Pietrangelo here. I've got him for 10 goals, 29 assists, 39 points. Blake has him for 9 goals, 29 assists, 38 points. Hard to get excited about anything going right for Pietrangelo. I guess multiple injuries to both Theodore and Hannafin could have
Yeah.
you with a really nice season for Pietrangelo. But yeah, I mean, he's going to get blocks. He's probably going to be up around 200 blocks again. So yeah, if that excites you, then I guess you could be into that. I think ESPN leagues have like an unholy amount of points weight for blocks, so maybe over there you could still be into Alex Pietrangelo, but I think that's going to be it. And then Braden McNabb, he's only going to score, I've got him for 21 points, but he is going to provide tons of bangs. I've got him for 157 hits and 207 blocks, so I still think that's well within the cards for Braden McNabb. I did check it out. It did seem like he was getting good solid minutes towards the end of last year, even after Hannafin came over, so I
Yep.
feel pretty reasonably confident that he's going to get maybe not quite 20 minutes time on ice, but he's going to be out there and he's going to be doing his thing, banging bodies, doing what we need for those Cats leagues. So, anything to add on Petrangelo or McNabb there, Blake?
Yeah, I mean Petrangelo, he's going to have to change his role. Like he's an aging player, not that old, but I mean he's 34. He's going to have to change his game. This guy's basically Colton Parayko now, right? Like if you like Colton Parayko, let me get you into Alex Pietrangelo, all right? Because yeah, he has no chance at power play 1 and maybe an outside chance. I think I projected a minute of power play time for him, so that's basically two defensemen power play 2 unit there. So that said, I mean Pietrangelo, I'm just looking at his numbers. When Hanifin was there, last 20 games, he got 19 points. This guy popped the hell off. He's also I was going to say huge dingus, and I am going to say it. He's a huge dingus. Giggity. This guy's a mean player. But yeah, his time on ice went down by like 3 minutes after Hanifin went there. So, I mean, it is what it is, right? Pick him up as a streamer.
All right, let's talk about our top 3 targets. I've got Jack Eichel as number 1 for all the reasons we outlined. Pretty high on Eichel this year under Bruce Cassidy. Shea Theodore coming in at number 2 for me, just because, I think the even strength points are pretty secure. If he does get the top power play all year long, you could be looking at a really nice high point ceiling for this player, and he is being drafted pretty late because of the Hanifin factor, so that does make him a little bit more of a target in my mind. And then I kind of hedge my bets here between Alexander Holtz and Pavel Dorofeev. I got both on here.
Make a decision, Nate.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I guess I would say, like, just based on the pure numbers, I'm more excited about Dorofeev. If he were on the top power play, if you told me that today, if you told me he was playing on the top line with Eichel as of today, like, both of those things would make me pretty excited about Dorofeev and worthy of even, like, a last-round pick in some cases. Mm-hmm. Gun to my head, I'm going Dorofeev there. What do you got, Blake?
Yeah, I've got Eichel, obviously, as the first one. And again, I want to reiterate what you said. You pick up 2 wingers with your first 2 picks, and then you get Eichel in the 3rd round. Bang! You're loving life. I mean, that is a great pick. So I'm super stoked on Eichel this year. I've got Hanifin as my second pick, just because you can get him later than Theodore. Like, to me, again, like we talked about, Theodore, if he's power play 1, it's a dunk at whatever his draft position is, but there's we just don't know, right? So to me, I think you can get Hanifin later on at value. So that's why I'm going him there. And then I went with Holtz because I do think that Holtz is going to get that line 1 deployment. He's not going to get power play 1, I don't think. But if that happened for some reason, I don't know. But I do love that you put Holtz and Dorofeev because I think that's a really interesting choice, right? And that's something you should watch. Like, one of those guys is going to get a little bit more opportunity, right? And I think they're both capable of doing something for fantasy. So that's a neat piece to watch. Holtz versus Dorofeev.
For sure. Yeah, I will say, like, any of these underachieving shooters, these guys that haven't quite cracked the fantasy relevance sphere yet, Dorofeev, Holtz, even Victor Olofsson, if he somehow got reprioritized, he had that one, like, what was it, 25 or 29 goal season or something.
Going buck wild.
Yeah, so there's some scenarios in which one of these 3 players steps up. Like, it does seem to me like they really prioritized getting these types of players in the lineup in between Holtz and Olofsson, like similar archetypes in that sense. So I do think that there's something to that. And if any of them really pops off, that's how Vegas feels like they solved their cap crunch around other things, is by having one of 3 players kind of pop off and become that secondary scoring threat. And that's how this team really unlocks the next level. So I think that's an interesting storyline to watch for sure. This last team, I think we probably don't really need to talk about at all. We could probably just kind of
need another episode, basically, is what you're saying. Like a whole other episode. Let's get into it.
All right, Vancouver, it is. They have some key departures. Elias Lindholm obviously came over at the trade deadline. They did not re-sign him in free agency. Kuzmenko obviously left at the trade deadline in that Lindholm trade. Ilya Mikheyev, I don't know if you can call him a key departure, but he did leave the team. Key additions here, Jake DeBrusk.
Stray is on the pod here. My God, he's a nice person.
He's a great person, actually. We had him in Toronto, and I really enjoyed him being around. But definitely for fantasy purposes, anyway, it's hard to call him a key departure.
All right, that's fair.
Jake DeBrusk, the big addition for sure for Vancouver this offseason. Danton Heinen, Daniel Sprong also coming in as some wingers who might be able to provide a little bit of scoring punch down the lineup. Let's dig into it a little bit. Obviously, I think, like, tell me if I'm wrong, Blake, but obviously DeBrusk is the crown jewel of this little graphic we've got on the screen right now.
I like them all. Am I just such a homer? Am I so out of touch?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm like Jake DeBrusk, yes. Dan Tynan, yes. Daniel Sprong, the Slinky. We got the Slinky. That's basically like a poor man's version of us getting Boone Jenner to me. All right. And we got the Slinky. And oh boy, am I excited about that. But yes, Jake DeBrusk, really nice signing. We'll talk about it in a little bit.
For sure. Coaching changes, nothing changing here, obviously, after Rick Tocchet and the job that he did this past year. He's back. Have to expect it's business as normal. You see anything there, Blake, with you mentioned about how the Canucks did tail off a little bit into the back half of the season. Do you think there's any potential changes coming out of that in terms of how the Canucks approach the season? Do they change the style of play at all to maybe try to figure out something because of that little bit of a slump to the end of the season?
Yeah. Absolutely. And the neat thing about Tocchet, and I've read a bunch about obviously the Canucks in the offseason here, but he actually had like a coaching symposium. They had like a 3-day event with all the coaches and they brought in all these people. They had this massive thing. Like, this is the type of crap that Tocchet's doing. It's very much like a think tank that they're approaching the season with. So I would expect, like some definite changes, right? Like when you win a playoff series with the lowest shot total ever, you got to do something, right? That's not good enough, right? And he realizes that. And I think something that happened with the Canucks is, in the first half of the season, everything was running through Quinn Hughes, right? He was flying off the back end. They're whipping it around, and teams started adjusting, right? They started playing up high on Quinn Hughes, and it kind of took some of that away. Like, Quinn Hughes is good enough to adjust, but like all their systems kind of needed to adjust too, and they just couldn't do it. And that went into the playoffs too. Like, there was basically a blueprint to, kind of shut the Canucks down and stop them from getting shots. So I think that, the team is clearly aware of that. I just read something, shout out to Thomas Drance. He's like a Canucks beat writer here. But yeah, I read what he was talking about with Tocchet and what they're looking to do, right? And it's find different ways of getting shots, right? Maybe away from Quinn Hughes. So I think, we'll see something a little bit different, but regardless, we're going to have people in charge like Tocchet and his assistants that really give a crap and are, ready to, they know what they don't know is what I'll say.
Right. Yeah, worth mentioning, this is the top team in even strength PEO last year, so definitely there's something to be said for potentially adjusting for a little bit of a negative regression on that front. Although, this is a team that you would expect to be relatively efficient across the board with good goaltending and good shooters. So we do take that into account as well. Let's talk about the power play. Obvious true top power play situation here. You got JT Miller, you got Elias Pettersson, you got Quinn Hughes, you got Brock Besser. They're all locked in. I'll put it to you, Blake, Jake DeBrusk or the field as the fourth forward on the top power play.
My gut's telling me Jake DeBrusk. I mean, that's why you bring him in, right?
Yeah.
And he does a lot of things well. He plays with speed. He's a great forechecker, right? So getting the puck to these guys, right? That's something he does really well, right? Whereas a guy like Brock Besser, not so good, right? But Jake DeBrusk, bang, like, he'll win those battles and get the puck to JT Miller, to Quinn Hughes, whatever. So I like that. I mean, I think that's how it should go. If it doesn't, for some reason, it's probably going to be Connor Garland like it was last year. So, take that with a grain of salt. But I really think you pay this man the money, you bring him here. I think of Jake DeBrusk like kind of like a poor man's JT Miller, and not in their style of play. I don't want to say that, but like when he came here, he was an underachieving forward with, kind of a high pedigree. And he had never really been given opportunity to do things. And he was given the keys here in Vancouver, and he succeeded with that. So I think Jake DeBrusk is going to get a true opportunity here in the first half of the season, and we'll see what he does with it. Because I've also heard from a lot of Boston Bruins fans that this guy gave up a little bit sometimes on the ice, and they didn't like that, right? So I've never noticed that personally when I watched Jake DeBrusk, but I didn't watch all the Boston Bruins games. So that's something I'm keeping my eye on, because that's something that Tocchet's not going to be too stoked about. If he's giving up on plays or he's being lazy out there, like, buddy, you're going to get the Kuzmenko treatment.
Fair enough. Yeah, all I heard was the comparison to JT Miller, so I am now expecting 103
Oh
points from
God, no.
Jake DeBrusk next season,
All right,
and I
maybe
will be drafting as
yeah.
such.
That's 2 seasons combined. All right.
All right, let's talk through the projections that we do have on these guys. So JT Miller off the top, I've got him for 31 goals, 61 assists, 92 points next season. Obviously, him and Brock Besser, I think, are the prime candidates to kind of take a little bit of a step back from the efficiency that they had last year. You've got JT Miller for 32 goals, 63 assists, coming out to 95 points. Yeah, similar numbers in the end, but both of us have him taking a little bit of a step back from last season.
I think you have to, right? We have to be smart, right? Like they were on a bender and it didn't make any sense, right? Like we were talking about all season, like it's going to fall off. And I'm watching these games and everything was going right. So, I mean, just the law of averages, like that's going to back off, right? And it did for the back half of the season and then into the playoffs. That said, I mean, this team that they showed they don't really give up. Like they're kind of in games. And I think when you have a talented team like this, similar to the Leafs, like you're not fully out of games. Like if guys put their head down and just get the business, like, I think things could go well. But yeah, I do think you got to bake that into your projections.
Yeah, the one other thing with JT Miller, under Rick Tocchet, his minutes were actually pretty significantly reduced.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back the prior 3 seasons with the Canucks, he was up around 21 minutes a night, 19-29 last season under Rick Tocchet. Obviously didn't affect his production, but in terms of projecting moving forward, you definitely have to bake that in, and that's a big reason why we have the points totals coming back down to earth a little bit.
Yeah. To me, there though, too. Sorry to interrupt you, Nate. That's shorthanded time to me. Like he's getting less time shorthanded, right? But in terms of offense, he's out there in every situation. And then you look at what he did in the playoffs. This guy, he went off. Like he only had a 9.3% shorthanded share, and he played 21 and a half minutes in the playoffs, right? So yeah, I think I'm not too worried about JT Miller's ice time. I think it's the penalty kill that he's losing a little bit of time on.
Yeah, fair enough. He lost, 22 seconds at even strength. Relative to 2 years ago, it was 1 minute and 2 seconds. So it has steadily decreased the last 2 years at even strength, which is more in line. Obviously, I'm just going to kind of keep it consistent with what it was last year. That's under Rick Tocchet, right? So that's where I've got it. Jake DeBrusk next up. The projection here for me is 26 goals, 29 assists for 55 points. You've got him for 31 goals, 33 assists, and 64 points. The true Canucks fan colored glasses on here. Defend yourself, Blake.
Oh, man. I mean, sometimes you just got to, I don't think this is that big of a swing, honestly, on this player. Like, yeah, I guess it is. This may be one of my bigger swings on the season, but I really do feel like he's going to get some opportunity, and the positions that are open here in Vancouver and the type of player that they need are filled, with the player that Jake DeBrusk is, right? And this is a guy that has paced for 64 points before. He, like in 2022-23, he paced for 64 points with the Bruins. In a similar capacity, he had great top 6 numbers, but he was on power play 2 for a lot of that year, right? I think power play 1 is his, and I've projected him as such. So like, what did I give him here for power play 1 ice time? Sorry, I'm just looking here, folks. Yeah, just under 3 minutes. So basically just, I baked in a little, like I gave him 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Sorry, because yeah, if those things are true, like he gives up on the play, maybe he gets in the doghouse at some point in the season. I don't know, but I just think that the power play 1 is his, and that's going to be the big difference. And I think that should sort of equal this point total.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. What do you got for the? So I'm pretty in line with the time on ice. What do you have for the overall power play points? I've got 17.7.
19.7.
Okay, so only a couple there. So it's mostly even strength that you're giving him more than. I have him for 14 minutes time on ice, even strength.
Yep, same.
Okay, 9.1 shots per 60, 65% IPP.
I've got him for 9.15 and then 62% IPP.
Okay, so even less than me. On ice shooting percentage, I've got him for 10%. What do you have?
Yeah, there you go. I've got him for 11.8. Bang. He's in Vancouver now, Nate. What are you doing? No, this is what they do out here. All right. We convert. All right. And that's even baking in. Like I looked at the other on ice shooting percentage of, the players that I think he's going to be playing with, and they're even regressing them. like baking in that regression, it still comes out to this sort of number. So, I mean, you know, you can take a few percentage points off there, sure, and maybe he gets like 60 points or something. But I think that's like in Vancouver, they're a more efficient team. And that's sort of how they've, you know, made their bacon here in Vancouver. So I think his on-ice shooting percentage is due for a big increase.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at the fact that even in that really good year with Boston, his even strengths, like when he was playing a lot with Bergeron and them, his on ice shooting percentage, the highest of his career. The highest of his career was in his rookie year where he wasn't playing much, but the highest of his career after that fact was 10%. He's always been a bit more of a chucker and kind of reduced his own on ice shooting percentage in that way, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
So I guess that's probably where I'm a little bit low. I've got him at 10%. That's probably on the low side overall, just considering the talent that he's likely to play with. I could look at that one a little bit, maybe bump him up a little bit. I'm definitely not going to get to where you're at, but maybe I might be a little bit higher than 55 points at the end of it all. All right, we got to keep moving. Brock Besser, I've got him for 34 goals, 32 assists, 66 points. You've got him for 33 goals, 36 assists, just to get him to that very nice 69
Anytime you
points.
can project for 69, you do it.
And that's exactly what you do in all facets of life. Brock Besser, definitely a player that you feel comfortable with at this point, right? Like he kind of feels like he is what he is. He's locked into the role. He's locked in with JT Miller on that line. I just feel really comfortable with drafting Brock Besser at value, where he's going to go. I think everybody in fantasy hockey knows who Brock Besser is right now, and they're going to draft him as such. And if you're in that spot where you draft him, you're just going to feel fine about it.
Yep. I mean, the thing about Besser to me, though, is he's a supplement, right? He's a supplementary piece. He's not the one driving the offense. So if Miller gets injured or, you know, anything like that, if he gets moved down the lineup and plays with lesser players, we're going to see a lot less. Like he doesn't have the ability to do it himself. Right. He needs people like Miller zipping passes off his stick in front of the net. Right. But I mean, the good thing is Canucks have two amazing centers. Shout out to the Canucks. So whether he plays with Miller or Pettersson, like I can't see them moving Besser to the third line to play with like Teddy Bluegert. No.
Right.
So I think we're pretty safe there, but it's just something to consider. Right. This is a supplementary guy. You don't go out and be like, you know what, Besser, 70-point Besser, 40 goals. He's elite. It's like, no, he got 40 goals because he's playing with really elite players and he's good at what he does.
All right. Let's continue on then to Pettersson, 35 goals, 49 assists, 84 points for me. You're a little bit hotter as per usual. You've got him for 38 goals, 52 assists, and 90 points. So talk to me about Pettersson. What do you see? Obviously kind of an up and down year last year. So talk to me about the narrative there with Pettersson and why you've got him a little bit higher than me.
I just think there's a good chance it bounced back. I think when we saw him get 100 points, that's his ceiling, right? We're not seeing anything higher than that. I don't value him that way. And I didn't going into last year either. Like, and he still popped for 89 points in 82 games, but it was a tale of two seasons, right? Like this guy had 58 points in the first 44 games, and then he had 31 in the final 38, right? So, and I think there was some injury issues that he was playing through, right? He was pretty like coy about it, but I think there was a knee injury that he was fine to play, but it was affecting him. And I also think too, his new contract and like just sort of the, you know, people were piling on Pettersson, especially in the playoffs. And I really wasn't here for that, but he did seem a little bit soft to me, especially in the playoffs. And that was hard to see, especially when you're paying a guy this kind of money. So he's definitely got some big shoes to fill, but then you look at the players they were playing him with all year and what the hell, like Ilya Mikheyev, like, thank you for your service, buddy. No, get to the fourth line, please. All right. This makes no sense. They had him there. They had, you know, Pia Suter at times. They had, obviously he started with Kuzmenko, but that went away. I just think they knew what they needed to do. They brought in Daniel Sprong and they brought in Jake DeBrusk. And I think these guys are going to be stapled, at least Jake DeBrusk, to Pettersson, right? And Jake DeBrusk does a lot of things that Pettersson really needs. Like Jake DeBrusk will forecheck and get him the puck. He'll get in, get the puck retrieval, get it to Pettersson, right? And Pettersson can do the rest. So I do think a bounce back is coming, but nothing crazy, right? Like he had 89 last year. What did I project him for? Like 90. Right. I think it's still a pretty conservative projection for Pettersson. Obviously, we know what he can do, but Yeah. What did you have him for? Because I actually didn't even realize what
I got him for 84 this
84.
year.
Okay, so talk to me about that.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I'm looking at here is I'm trying and failing to really believe that the on ice shooting percentage is going to continue year after year to just be at absolutely elite levels. It feels super outlierish to me, even across a 2-year sample. So I've actually got them below the last 2 years. Last year was 14.8%, which is insane at even strengths. Like that definitely will not repeat. So I'm kind of like doing a little bit of like a league average regression on his on ice shooting percentage, which I'm assuming you're not to get him there. Yeah, I definitely could see the upside case where he gets to 90 points. I'm not saying that that's impossible by any stretch of the imagination, but he's going to have to be that efficient once again. Definitely possible. Jake DeBrusk sticks with them all season. If Jake DeBrusk has a 65-point season the way you've got it, like, yeah, there's definitely scenarios in which Pedersen hits 90 points, no problem. But as a median projection, I just find it really hard to predict anybody to have an on-ice shooting percentage above 13% at even strength. So that's where I'm probably a little bit lower on him than you are.
He's done it twice, Nate. Oh, buddy, he's done it twice. But yeah, I think to your point, yeah, that we're talking PDO going down. Like, I think you can bake that in and feel pretty damn good about that. And it's not even like you've got him for 84. I've got him for 90. Like,
yeah,
if he gets 84, I'm laughing. I'm like, yeah, I got him for 90. I'm 6 points away. Like it's not a big deal, right? I think if he gets 84, we're happy to.
Yep, absolutely. Got some other kind of more role players on this team we can talk through a little bit more briefly. Höglander I've got for 33 points. Heinen I've got for 33 points. Joshua I've got for 37 points. And Connor Garland I've got for 47 points. You've got Höglander for 38. I don't think you did one for Heinen, at least at this point. When I pulled these numbers, 36 for Joshua and 49 for Garland. You mentioned Garland could be the guy to get a little bit of that power play time if DeBrusk falls out of favor at some point. I've got him for a minute 45 on the power play, so really not baking in a whole lot of that. Maybe just like a touch here or there, like for a 10-game stretch at some point. But however you have that.
Yeah, same here. Like a minute 50-ish.
Yeah. Okay. So definitely Connor Garland, the guy who is more of the streamer territory player, the guy who can actually score, actually does take a bunch of shots, has a high IPP at even strength. So even if he's not getting power play time, he's probably going to be a decent bet as a streamer when Vancouver's got a good schedule in season. The other guy that you're super high on, and I didn't even project because I think he's most likely to play most of his time on the fourth line, is Daniel Sprong, the Slinky. You have him for a very solid 23 goals, 25 assists, 48 points. And I can't get behind this one, so you can defend yourself again here, Blake.
You know what we love about Daniel Sprong? This man is he's a metrics wizard, right? Shots on goal per 60, individual scoring chances for per 60. He does that. He's a per minute beast, and I think he's going to get some decent minutes with the Canucks. Like I've projected him for 13 and a half minutes basically. So that's decent, right? I mean, what did you get Sprong for?
I still haven't done Sprong.
At this
point,
you better get your butt in gear, buddy. What are you doing? I mean, for reference, like this guy had 12 minutes average time on ice last year with the Wings, and he popped for 43 points with the Wings. Okay. And he was playing with Robbie Fabry and that household name, Christian Fischer. Okay. So, I think like, let's say he spends half the season playing with Jake DeBrusk and Elias Pettersson. That is already a better situation, right? I've only projected him for like a minute and a half more time on ice, right? And he's already recognized his defensive problems, right? Like him and Tocchet had a conversation. I read an interview, and Sprong basically had a bunch of teams that were interested, but he chose Canucks because of his conversation with Rick Tocchet. So I think there's simpatico there. I think he knows what he isn't good at, and he's working on that, and he wants to be part of this team. And I really do think that you don't bring in a guy like Daniel Sprong to get him on the fourth line. I mean, these other teams have, sure, but like it's a 1-year deal, a show me deal. I think they're going to give him some opportunity, right? And it's not like I'm projecting him for power play 1, although if they put Sprong on power play 1, that would make total sense to me. I wouldn't be like, I'd be like, yeah, get Sprong out there. This guy's amazing offensively. But I do think that second line is his with Pettersson and DeBrusk, and I projected him as such.
Yeah, I can't get there for a variety of reasons. Number one is they actually prioritized Heinen. They signed him on day one of free agency. They didn't sign Sprong until July 20th. So they had lots of opportunity in between then to go out and get him if he was going to be a big part of their plans. And they didn't, and nobody else did either. So that's part that has me thinking he's more of like a bottom six, efficient player for sure. Love players like this, but it also feels like the exact mold of a player that I've been burned on a lot of times before.
You're traumatized.
I have been traumatized by my Oliver Wahlstrom love and my Ross Colton love and
He's
a whole bunch
produced
of
more
others.
than those guys. He's produced. He's on top of those guys. This guy's better than Arthur Kaliev. I mean, in theory.
In theory, yeah, for sure. He definitely has. I'm not taking that away from him. I'm just saying I think I just completely disagree on the role here for
Totally.
Daniel Sprong unless I see something. If I see that role, like if he's there, then absolutely. Like I would project it probably the same way in that role. I'm just saying at this point, with what we know at this point, I just don't see that as the most likely scenario. So, being a little more reticent there, but willing to have my mind changed by some coach talk come training camp season. We got to talk about the defenseman here. Obviously, Quinn Hughes, we both have for 87 points. I got him for 15 goals. You got him for 14. Very close on our projections here. I don't know what
Nice.
there is really to say about Quinn Hughes. Obviously, not really a guy who like shows out in the peripheral metrics. So, not a great guy for Bangers Cats or some of the more peripheral heavy points setups that you might have. But whenever a defenseman is scoring 87 points in a season, you're definitely going to draft that defenseman pretty highly. Talk to me about Quinn Hughes. What do you see? Like, is there upside from this? Is there downside from this? What do you see as the likely kind of error banding on this 87 point projection we both have?
Uh, I think this is around where he should be. Like 92 is ceiling to me, which he got last year. I don't see that's just a special season, and it goes
Yep.
hand in hand with the Canucks' crazy efficiency that they had, right? And so many players having career years. So, but still, I mean, like 87 points I got him for. Geez, I love that. Like Quinn Hughes is, to me, he's the best defenseman in the league at retrieving the puck and getting it out of the zone smartly. He's so good at that. Like he's not dynamic the way that Cale Makar is, right? Like, but he does everything so subtly and he's so good at it, right? And moving the puck around, he rarely makes mistakes and he's so small. So just a lot to love about Quinn Hughes here. I think, 80 points, 80 to 85 points is probably where Quinn Hughes lives for the majority of his career, like in his prime. You know what I mean? And I was really happy to see the shots come up and 17 goals last year. I mean, if this is one of those things too, like I projected him for 14, you have him for 14 as well. Like that, we could get burned on that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I think, everybody was running hot. So I could see Quinn Hughes having single digit goals, maybe 9 goals next year, but I'm an optimist, and you know this, Nate.
Yep, I'm there with you. The other defenseman of note, obviously Philip Hronek, had kind of a tale of two seasons as well there. I've got him for 8 goals and 35 assists for 43 points. You got him for 7 goals, 35 assists for 42 points. Am I reading that right? Did I do the math right? It's because of the decimals. That's why. So yeah, pretty similar there, obviously, on Hronek. I don't know what more there is really to say. Obviously, in the case of a Quinn Hughes injury, him going on the top power play would be very interesting. He could, I don't know, crest 55 point pace at that point in a season and be a lot more interesting. He provides a little bit more in terms of the peripherals. He's probably going to be around 100 hits, be around a block per game. Like, it's not great by any stretch, but it's definitely a little bit more than you're getting out of a guy like Quinn Hughes. Definitely not nearly as offensively dynamic at even strength or on the power play, but definitely a player to be interested in, to stream, and then to hold in deeper leagues with the thought that, if there is, God forbid, a Quinn Hughes injury, that Hronek would instantly be one of the most valuable fantasy defensemen on the market.
I'm with you, man. Although I'm definitely not interested in Hronek this year. I love the baked-in insurance of if Quinn Hughes goes down, right? That's where Hronek gets value. But to me, massive overachiever last year at 48 points is just, again, another example of the Canucks' massive efficiency there. I don't think he's like he had 39 points the season before in 64 games. That's fine. But I think he's probably like a 35 to 45 point defenseman in his career.
Fair enough. All right, top 3 targets. Jake DeBrusk, number 1 for me, definitely makes sense. The ceiling case is just good here, right? Regardless of where we're pretty far apart on the initial projection, I'm going to go back and take a look at that. Maybe I can bump him up a little bit in terms
You
of
did that last year too.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about Pettersson. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Pedersen I did. But DeBrusk, I think definitely there's a ceiling scenario where everything just breaks right. He has instant perfect chemistry, and all of a sudden you're looking at like 70 plus points, and you're like, wow, where did this come from? So that's something that I definitely want to target when guys have that kind of upside because of the perceived role that we're seeing right now in the offseason. You definitely want to be in on that. Elias Pettersson's my number 2 target. I think that maybe he gets a little bit of flack from just everyone for how the season ended, and he slips a little bit in your drafts, and you can get him at value, and he does have that 90 plus point upside. And then Danton Heinen is the other guy I'll throw in here, probably more as a streamer for sure, but this is a guy who actually does shoot, is fairly efficient. If you were to get a chance up the lineup, I'd actually get pretty interested in Heinen there. Blake, who do you got?
Yeah, no, I like what you said about Heinen there. To me, he's like Pius Suter, like maybe almost a better version, right? So, and that's just a Swiss Army knife. So I like that. I've got DeBrusk and Pettersson for all the reasons you mentioned, and then I've got Höglander and Sprong as opportunity plays. So, like, I think Höglander has a good shot in the top 6 this season. He's great at forechecking. This guy's he's a spark plug for sure. Obviously, he needs to fix some elements of his game, which I'm sure have been made very apparent to him by the coaching staff here. So hopefully he's able to do that. I mean, JT Miller and Brock Besser played a lot of last season with Phil Di right? Like, what? You know, I don't know. Höglander actually has acumen. He's great. He scored an amazing amount of even strength goals last year. I like Höglander a lot, maybe as a flyer pick. Sprong is going to be my premier streamer for the Canucks going into the season here. And then, yeah, depending on where he lands, maybe you hold him. Maybe you hold the Slinky. Oh, you roll him down the stairs. That's good, clean fun.
Yeah, I do think that this is probably going to be a really good streaming team, right? Depending on whoever's in the top 6 at any given moment, like that's going to be a player that you want. And if they do anything weird, if DeBrusk gets in the doghouse and you've got somebody else on the top power play, that's also going to be a reason to want to stream somebody in from Vancouver. So I do think that this is a team to watch because of the upside, just being around these kind of top end players that the Canucks do have. All right. Well, if you are excited about one of these teams more than the other, we'd love to hear your comments. Put those in the YouTube episode. If you're listening on Spotify, you can also comment on Spotify on the app now, and we'll get all those comments and we can respond to you there. We definitely want to continue the conversation. If there's anybody that you thought was just absolutely outlandish the way that we have it projected, or if you think we're absolutely wrong about the deployment we're projecting or something along those lines, then for sure give that to us in the comments and we can have a discussion. As you might be able to tell as we pass the 2-hour mark on this podcast,
How did this happen?
Blake and I tend to enjoy these kind of conversations, so we'd love to have that conversation with you. I do want to mention the Apples and Genos Patreon coming September 1st. These are all going to drop right now. You can get in there for just $1.50. It's part of the summer special. You'll get early access to my projections, which will go live to the general public on September 1st. And also on September 1st, the general Patreon will go live. We have a supporter tier. It will just be $2 a month Canadian. That'll get you access to some patron-only live shows once per month. I'm going to be doing some pretty interesting stuff in there. Going to have a topic that I'm going to discuss off the top, take some questions on. Then I'm going to do a team review for one of the Patreon members, and we'll talk through that. There's always good takeaways for everybody whenever I do something like that, so that'll be interesting. And then we'll do some general Q&A, make sure everybody's questions get answered in there. So if you want to have access to those live shows, $2 a month gets you in the door there. Then the Apples tier will be $8 a month. You'll get the access to the live shows, but you also get access to the patron-only Discord channels, a chance to play against me in the Patron League, which I won last year, so definitely you'll have to come try to dethrone me from that. You also get access to all my show notes, and especially you'll want those for the waiver wire show notes that gives you top 10 rankings for every single week of the season, who you should be targeting on the waiver wire, and yeah, just really in-depth information to be found in there about how to go about optimizing your weekly ads. And you'll also get some new player evaluation tools that we're really excited about here at Apples and Ginos. If you saw Puzzling Players last year, you saw me use a version of this tool. I've kind of been working and refining it in the background this off season. It's looking pretty slick, and I think it'll be really helpful for people looking to compare players, make some quick decisions between players this off season. And then there'll be the Ginos tier for you absolute degenerates who want to pay me $15 a month. You'll get all those perks that I already mentioned, but you'll also get every single question that you can send my way. I guarantee that I will answer it. So if you're interested in any of that, look for the drop on September 1st on the Apples and Geos Patreon. Link is in the description. While you're here, check out the Discord. Also, link is in the description. We got well over 1,000 managers, fantasy hockey managers in there talking about hockey all the time. You can also find the Best Ball Slow Drafts. We're at Best Ball 26 right now going on. Tell me another place where you can find 26 paid leagues already going by August 9th. I bet you can't. And last of all, like, rate, review, subscribe, comment, all that stuff really does help us out. It's the best way to say thank you for anything here. If you enjoyed this, if you got any value out of it, that is the best thing you can do for us here at Apples and Ginos. But that is all we've got for this episode. Hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, a terrific free resource.
That's true.
Many thanks to the band there for supplying music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. Many thanks to all of you for sticking it out for 2+ hours. That's going to be it, folks. Much love.